Chapter 43-47. If there was no external help, it was very likely that they wouldn't even be able to see his shadow, let alone catch him. The Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was a local bully in the Wayark waters. Moreover, as an escort agency, their connections and information were absolutely not to be underestimated. If Chi Han could help, they could indeed get twice the result with half the effort. Since Brother Chi has said so, I won't stand on ceremony.
Here's the thing.
I came to the Wayark waters this time to hunt down a wanted criminal who escaped from the North Island. His name is Wu Baoliang, Lin Yi immediately told Chi Han. Wu Baoliang. Chi Han raised his eyebrows and said thoughtfully, I haven't heard of him. But since he escaped from the North Island, it's not surprising that he is unknown here. Brother Ling, you can tell me in detail. Well, this person's strength was at the peak of the late stage of Gold Core. He was an extremely famous evil cultivator in the North Island. He specialized in sucking the blood essence of virgin girls for cultivation. More than 300 people were killed by him, which caused public resentment. When the law enforcement hall of the North Island was ready to take action against him, he escaped. According to the latest information from the law enforcement hall, the last place Wu Baoliang appeared was in the Wayark waters. Lin Yi explained the situation. Specialized in sucking the blood essence of virgin girls, and more than 300 people? Even Chi Han was speechless when he heard such a shocking thing. The Wayark waters were chaotic, but there were not many people who committed such a heinous crime. This is just a rough estimate. If we count the missing women nearby, the real number should be far above this. Lin Yi shook his head and sighed. The reason why he took this task at the beginning, in addition to specifically looking at the Wayark waters as the task location, was that he felt that this evil cultivator was too heartless and had to be killed. There's actually such a scumbag who specializes in harming women. He's as evil as the Chung father and son. Chi Han was also indignant and said, Brother Ling, don't worry. I'll find someone to inquire about this Wu Baoliang. I'll let you know as soon as there's news. That's great. Thank you, Brother Chi. However, while asking people to look for Wu Baoliang, can you help me find out the whereabouts of another person? Lin Yi quickly asked. Another person? No problem. Gathering information is what our escort agency is best at. Brother Ling, who do you want to find out? Just tell me. Chi Han promised. Alright, the person I want to inquire about is called Lu Bianren, a senior brother of our Clear Cloud Pavilion on the North Island. He has always taken good care of me. Previously, he came out to the Verdant Sea with a group of people to complete a mission. I lost contact with the others after that, and I haven't heard from them since. Lin Yi said with a sigh. This was the main reason why he decided to come to the Verdant territorial waters. Regardless of whether he could find it in the end, he had to work hard. No problem. If he appears in a public place here, we will definitely be able to get wind of it. Brother Ling, you don't have to worry. Chi Han hurriedly agreed. Regarding the South Continent Escort Agency's grand gathering, Brother Ling, you should really consider it carefully. It won't take up too much of your time. Who knows, the event might end before you even finish your task. Alright, I'll think about it. Lin Yi nodded. If it was purely to help him participate in the South Continent Escort Agency's event, and not to join the security chief, it was not a bad idea. He would just take it as a favor in return for gathering information. While the two of them were talking, there was a sudden commotion outside the escort agency. It was noisy, and it seemed like many people had arrived. Could it be that my father has returned? Chi Han couldn't help but wonder. His father had recently been busy preparing for the South Continent Escort Agency's Grand Festival, which was the most important event for the escort agency. Normally, he wouldn't come back, but this time, the escort agency had been tricked by Wei Xiaodong. After all, it wasn't a small matter, and it was possible that he would come back personally to deal with it. However, just as Chi Han and Lin Yi were looking at each other, a guard suddenly ran in and said with a panicked expression, Something has happened, young master. That fellow Chinkatian has brought people to block the door. Chinkatian? Did that brat take the wrong medicine? How dare he bring people to block the door of our Equal Heaven Escort Agency? Chi Han was stunned. Although the Poison Eye mercenary band was a troublemaker, and many people's expressions changed at the mention of their name, Qi Wenhan didn't take it to heart. Especially after he had led people to fight a few times with them 2 years ago. Qin Ketian was no match for him, and had been beaten to a pulp several times. As a result, every time young Master Qing saw him, Qi Wenhan couldn't help but feel apprehensive and weak in the knees. And if Qin Ketian's father, Qin Haonan, came out, then his own father would also come out personally. What was there to be afraid of? Qi Wenhan was still confused, but Lin Yi, who was beside him, knew full well that after being taught a lesson by him at the docks, this young Master Qing must have gone back to get reinforcements, and was ready to come back to get back at him. Brother Ling, continue drinking here. I'll go out and take a look, and I'll be back soon. Qi Wenhan immediately stood up and said. No matter what, Qin Ketian was the young master of the Poison Eye mercenary band. If he didn't come out personally, the other people in the escort agency would have a hard time dealing with him. Brother Qi, I'd better go with you. If I'm not wrong, this guy should be coming for me. Lin Yi smiled and shook his head.
Ah.
Qi Wenhan couldn't help but be confused. Then he suddenly slapped his head and said, That's right, Brother Ling. You and Old Kong worked together to injure him. With that guy's narrow-minded nature, he definitely won't let you off easily. But after such a long time, he's coming to block the door for such a small matter. This guy must be sick in the head. That might not be the case. Actually, there's something I didn't have time to tell Brother Qi. Just now, before I returned to the agency, I fought with them again at the docks. Lin Yi said, pinching his nose.
What?
Then Brother Ling, you're not injured, are you? That scum Qin Ketian only knows how to bully others. Every day, he brings Old Kong everywhere to show off his power. A dignified early-stage, nascent soul expert has become his dog. But this dog is very powerful. Brother Ling, if you meet them again in the future, you'd better bear with it. Qi Wenhan hurriedly warned. There's no need to avoid them. Actually, the dog that Brother Qi mentioned was crippled by me just now. Lin Yi shrugged and spread out his hands. Qi Wenhan suddenly had a strange look on his face. He looked at Lin Yi from head to toe again, his eyes looking like he was looking at a monster. Before this, he had already thought highly of Lin Yi's strength, but he didn't think that he had still greatly underestimated him. He couldn't help but ask, Forgive me for asking, but Brother Ling, you're still a Golden Core expert, right? That's right, the middle stage of Golden Core. Lin Yi nodded calmly. There was no need to hide this point. It could be seen as soon as they fought. Chapter 43-48. Qi Wenhan choked for a moment. He also believed that Lin Yi was in the mid-gold core stage. After all, he had the same feeling before. But a mid-gold core stage expert was actually able to cripple Old Kong, a peak early nascent soul stage expert. What was wrong with this world? Had he gone mad, or had the world gone mad? No wonder that brat was so angry. If it was me, I would also be angry. Qi Wenhan finally said with a speechless grin. Having an enemy like Lin Yi, no matter who it was, their heart would tremble with fear. With Qin Ketian's courage, if he didn't eliminate this threat as soon as possible, he probably wouldn't even be able to sleep. The two of them arrived at the entrance of the escort agency. At this moment, there was already a large circle of people outside. Both ends of the street were blocked by passers-by who had come to watch the show. In the middle of the door stood Qin Ketian, and behind him was a group of experts from the Poison Eye mercenary group. Each of them had an imposing manner, and were all ruthless characters who killed without blinking an eye. Lin Yi glanced at them. Among this group of experts from the Poison Eye mercenary group, there were actually 3 that he couldn't see through. If he wasn't mistaken, they should be nascent soul stage experts. Even Qin Ketian could mobilize 3 nascent soul stage experts. This kind of strength was not bad. It was no wonder that the Poison Eye mercenary group was able to wreak havoc in the Weiwan Sea. Lin Yi was a little surprised that the other party had mobilized such a large force. But after thinking about it, he understood. Before, Old Kong, a peak early nascent soul stage expert, was crippled by him. If he didn't bring so many experts to protect him, how would Qin Ketian dare to block the door? Seeing Qi Wenhan and Lin Yi come out, especially when he saw Lin Yi, Chen Ketian subconsciously shrunk his head. The ferocious scene on the pier had truly frightened him. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was scared witless. It had left a shadow in his heart. But when he saw Lin Yi's mocking gaze, Chen Ketian suddenly stiffened his neck. He couldn't help but become angry out of humiliation. With a rude and unreasonable expression, he pointed at Lin Yi and said, "Men, capture this guy for me." An order was given. The group of experts behind him immediately released their auras, causing a commotion in the surroundings. As for the three nascent soul stage experts, they all had a solemn expression. Although the opponent was a golden core stage expert, they had learned their lesson from Old Kong. They didn't dare to lower their guard and were prepared to work together to take down Lin Yi. Courting death. Lin Yi's eyes were also filled with killing intent. He had let Chen Ketian off at the docks earlier because he didn't want the Poison Eye mercenary group to fall out with him. But now, Chen Ketian didn't know what was good for him. If that was the case, he wouldn't mind going on a killing spree. Lin Yi didn't want to find trouble for himself, but he was never afraid of trouble. Even if the other side was a local tyrant who would turn pale at the mention of his name, as long as he found the right opportunity to use a super alchemic fire true chi bomb, the experts of the Poison Eye mercenary band would definitely die. For a time, the situation suddenly became tense. No matter who made the slightest move, there would immediately be a bloody storm. This kind of thing happened in the Verdant Arc Sea, but he was already used to it. However, under everyone's gazes, Qi Wenhan calmly walked until he was one step away from Chen Ketian. Indifferently, he said, "Capture someone? If you have the ability to catch one for me to see, as long as you dare to touch him, I dare to make all of you unable to return. Do you want to make this bet with me, young Master Chen?" As soon as he finished speaking, the group of escorts from the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency suddenly released their auras. There was no lack of nascent soul experts among them. After all, this was the headquarters of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency. "You, don't be too arrogant." Chen Ketian immediately choked. He was so frightened by Qi Wenhan's aggressive gaze that he took a step back in front of everyone. He couldn't help but curse in his heart. "Fuck, I'm the one who's here to seek revenge. Why does it feel like this guy's temper is even bigger than mine?" Unbeknownst to him, Qi Wenhan had been suppressing a belly full of anger at Wei Xiaodong's place and just happened to have nowhere to vent it. This fellow had come looking for trouble. Who could he blame? Arrogant? You, young Master Chen, brought so many people to block the entrance of my Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. No matter how I look at it, you are the arrogant one, aren't you? Qi Wenhan laughed coldly. Previously at the docks, this Ling Yi from your escort agency injured Elder Kong. What's wrong with me bringing people to capture the real culprit? If you do something wrong, you have to admit it. Your Heaven's Equal Escort Agency has always been righteous and righteous. I don't think you will protect your own people, right? Some things are better said than done. It's not easy for your escort agency to build up a reputation. You won't destroy your own foundation for an insignificant person, right? Chen Ketian said in a strange tone. Every time they crossed swords, Chen Ketian had been suppressed by Qi Wenhan's men. Even now, he still had lingering fears. Today, in front of Qi Wenhan, he didn't dare to be forceful and could only speak in this manner. You are weak and your skills are inferior. Who can you blame for suffering losses? Why are you talking to me about the real culprit? Haha, the sun must have risen from the west today. Since when did your dignified Poison Eye mercenary band start to reason with others? Qi Wenhan was instantly amused. The surrounding crowd laughed along with him. The Poison Eye mercenary band had wreaked havoc everywhere. Almost everyone in Velvet Arc City had been threatened and persecuted by them. Yet, they still had the nerve to talk reason? Chen Ketian's face immediately turned red. He angrily shouted at the surrounding crowd. "What are you laughing at? If you laugh again, I'll cut off your tongues. You dare to laugh at my Poison Eye mercenary band? Are you all tired of living?" Chen Ketian's vicious and threatening gaze swept over them. The surrounding crowd immediately stopped laughing. Although they were angry, they didn't dare to speak out, afraid that they would be targeted by him. Qi Wenhan, I advise you to think carefully before you speak. Do you think it's worth it to make the entire Poison Eye mercenary band your enemy for such an insignificant person? Cheng Ketian threatened. Ha 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 ha. Qi Wenhan couldn't help but throw his head back and laugh. He looked at Cheng Ketian as if he were looking at an idiot and said, Young Master Cheng, did you not take your medicine today? Or did you take too much medicine? Why are you saying such stupid things? Our two families have fought at least 8 out of 10 times, big or small. Don't tell me you think that this is not being enemies, but a harmonious family? You. Cheng Ketian was so angry, he almost spat out blood. Qi Wenhan was practically his nemesis. He couldn't beat him in a fight, and he couldn't even win an argument. Every time he ran into this guy, nothing good would come out of it. It had been like this in the past, and it was still like this today. He couldn't beat him in a fight, and he couldn't win an argument either. What could he do? For a moment, Cheng Ketian was stuck between a rock and a hard place. He could only glare at Lin Yi with hatred. However, he was afraid of Qi Wenhan and didn't dare to make a move. He couldn't help but curse inwardly. If he had known this would happen, he would have chosen a different location. Although he had brought many experts with him today, this was still the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency's headquarters. If they really fought, they would definitely be at a disadvantage. Chapter 43-49. At this moment, an expert from the Poison Eye mercenary group suddenly came over and whispered a few words. Cheng Ketian's eyes immediately lit up. Qi Wenhan, I advise you to consider this carefully. I've also heard about this Ling Yi. Not only did he lose his bodyguard, but he also defected to the pirates and escaped. Why do you still want to protect this kind of scum? Why don't you just give him to me, and I will help you clean up the mess. That way, you can save some effort. How about it? Cheng Ketian suddenly changed his tone to one of negotiation. He had long heard about the matter of Ling Yi defecting to the pirates. It was precisely because of this that he dared to add insult to injury. It was just that he had been too arrogant just now and had been pushed around by Qi Wenhan. With the reminder of his subordinate, he could use this as an excuse to get out of the situation. Who told you that Ling Yi defected to the pirates? Qi Wenhan could not help but laugh. Wayark City is only such a big place. Even the slightest movement would not be able to escape the eyes and ears of the Poison Eye mercenary group. You don't have to hide it anymore. It's unnecessary. Cheng Ketian said proudly. Is that so? Then I can only regretfully tell you that not only did Ling Yi not defect to the pirates, he even single-handedly snatched the goods back from the pirates. Young Master Cheng, have you not heard? It seems that the eyes and ears of the Poison Eye mercenary group are only SOSO. Qi Wenhan sneered. What? Cheng Ketian was instantly dumbfounded. Just now, when he was scared away by Lin Yi at the pier, he had hurried back to get reinforcements. Naturally, he did not know what had happened to the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. How did a chicken turn into a phoenix in the blink of an eye? Not only was this Ling Yi not the scum that the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency had to deal with, but he had instead become a hero? I'll tell you one last time. Ling Yi is a member of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, and he is the person that we value the most. If you dare to touch a single hair on his head, it will be a declaration of war against the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. This is a declaration of war against our Equal Heaven Escort Agency. Whether or not you can bear the consequences, it's up to you. Qi Wenhan said in front of everyone. His words were stern and righteous. Lin Yi nodded slightly as he watched the scene. They were trying to rope him in. However, this action of the other party had indeed given him a layer of protection, and he had to remember this kindness. Have you thought this through? Could it be that you really want to start another war with our Poison Eye mercenary group for such an insignificant fellow? Cheng Ketian couldn't help but stomp his foot in exasperation. Scram. Qi Wenhan couldn't even be bothered to look at him. Putting aside the fact that he valued Lin Yi so much, he was still counting on Lin Yi to help him participate in the escort agency's event. Cheng Ketian's threat was nothing in his eyes. Under the gazes of the crowd, Cheng Ketien's expression flickered between clear and dark, alternating between green and white. With a face full of resentment, he looked at Lin Yi, then looked at Qi Wenhan. In the end, he still did not dare to start a fight here. He could only fiercely say, "Just you wait and see," and dejectedly leave with his people. Qi Wenhan and Lin Yi looked at each other and smiled as they watched Cheng Ketien and the others leave. This fellow was indeed a clown who couldn't be brought up to the public. "Brother Qi, many thanks." Lin Yi sincerely thanked Qi Wenhan. He really didn't expect that. In the face of Cheng Ketien's overbearing attitude, Ling Qin would spare no effort to protect him. This was no small favor. "What are you saying? Brother Ling, no matter what, you are still a member of our Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Moreover, you are a meritorious official. Our escort agency doesn't dare to boast about other things, but to our own people, we definitely have nothing to say." Qi Wenhan patted his chest. He pulled Lin Yi back into the banquet hall and said, "Come, let's continue drinking. Don't let that bastard spoil your mood."
Haha, all right.
Lin Yi laughed heartily. The more he interacted with this young master, the more he realized that their temperaments were compatible. It was hard to find a confidant in this world, and there weren't many friends that could enter Lin Yi's eyes. As Lin Yi and Qi Wenhan drank and chatted, on the other side, Cheng Ketien, who had returned from the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency in defeat, was suppressing a belly full of anger. He wanted to kill someone. "Bar, come over here." Cheng Ketien pointed at one of the Golden Core perfected experts behind him. Now that old Kong was seriously injured and unconscious, he could only change to a temporary follower. "Yes, young Master Cheng, what orders do you have?" This person's name was Chun Zixio, but the members of the Poison Eye mercenary band usually called him Bar. "Regarding that Ling Yi, as well as what happened at the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency today, go and find out for me. Remember, don't miss out on even a single detail, or I will break your dog legs," Cheng Ketien said as he pinched his chin. The reason why he was rebuffed today was because he did not have good information. If he had known that Ling Yi was a meritorious official and not a traitor, he would not have brought people to the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency at all. That was purely asking for trouble. "Yes, young Master Cheng, please wait for me. I will go now." Chun Zixio nodded and left. An hour later, Chun Zixio returned and reported everything that had happened at the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency to Cheng Ketien in detail. These things had already spread like wildfire, so it was not difficult to find out. Moreover, with the eyes and ears of the Poison Eye mercenary band, it was as easy as flipping one's hand if they wanted to find out anything in Weiwan City.
What?
This fake news was all made up by those two cowards, Li Yanji and Guan Ziyuan, in order to avoid responsibility. So sinister and shameless, this young master is quite fond of them. After hearing this, Cheng Ketien had a look of surprise on his face. He then asked, "Then where are the two of them now? Have they been killed by Qi Wenhan?" "No. The two of them were stabbed 3 times and 6 times, and were thrown out by the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. They should still be lying in the rubbish heap, but I don't know if they're dead or alive," Chun Zixio replied. Forget it if they're dead. If they're still alive, find someone to pick them up and keep them with the Poison Eye mercenary band. Who knows, they might be of some use in the future." Cheng Ketien's eyes rolled as he instructed. "Yes." Chun Zixio nodded and immediately said, "There's another piece of news. It's about the conflict between the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency and the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Although the rumors on the streets are not very accurate, this matter has already spread like wildfire. This little one speculates that this matter should be basically true. Young Master Cheng, you might be interested in it."
"Oh, tell me about it."
Cheng Ketien was instantly interested. According to the rumors on the streets, the reason why the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency's escorts were robbed was purely because Wei Xiaodong of the Hong Chamber of Commerce had set up a trap. He had trapped Qi Wenhan and the entire Heaven's Equal Escort Agency together. Not long ago, Qi Wenhan brought his men to find trouble with Wei Xiaodong. In the end, he was sent back by Wei Xiaodong with just a few words and was given the cold shoulder, Chun Zixio reported. "There's such a thing?" Chung Katian's mouth twitched. This sounded exactly the same as what happened to him just now. R655. Chapter 4350. But this time, the unlucky one was not Chung Katian, but the arrogant Qi Wenhan. No wonder he was so angry just now. He couldn't help but laugh. Ha ha ha. Good. Qi Wenhan has his day. Wei Xiaodong is a wonderful person. In front of Qi Wenhan, Chung Katian had never been able to gain any advantage. He was not Qi Wenhan's opponent. No matter how arrogant and conceited he was, he had no choice but to admit this. But looking at it this way, everything had its vanquisher. In front of that old fox Wei Xiaodong, the arrogant Qi Wenhan was also helpless. Let's go to the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Chung Katian decided immediately. Yes. But young Master Chung, why are we going to the Hong Chamber of Commerce? Do we need to bring people? Chen Zixio quickly replied. Bring people? Bring what people? We are not going to stand up for Qi Wenhan. Why would we bring people to the Hong Chamber of Commerce? Chung Katian curled his lips. Then we are. Chen Zixio couldn't keep up with Chung Katian's thoughts. You're so stupid. Chung Katian kicked Chen Zixio's face in front of everyone. He then pretended to be profound and said, The enemy of my enemy is my friend. This move of mine is called killing with a borrowed knife. Yes, young Master Chung is brilliant. Chen Zixio quickly smiled apologetically and climbed up from the ground. But in his heart, he was disdainful. You want to deal with an old fox like Wei Xiaodong with your little IQ? You won't even know if you get betrayed. You'll probably be happy to help others earn money. Killing with a borrowed knife? Without further ado, Chung Katian brought Chen Zixio to the Hong Chamber of Commerce and requested to see Wei Xiaodong. After all, he was the young master of the Poison Eye mercenary group and was the most troublesome local bully in the area. The shop assistant did not dare to slight him and respectfully invited the two of them to the guest hall.
Oh.
Young Master Chung, what a rare guest. After a while, Wei Xiaodong came out with a smile.
Haha.
Shopkeeper Wei, long time no see. How have you been? Chung Katian smiled and cupped his hands. While smiling and exchanging greetings, Wei Xiaodong was puzzled. Why did this guy suddenly come to see him? In the Verdant Arc territorial waters, the Hong merchant group was considered an external force. They had always been neutral and minded their own business with the other forces. Even a local tyrant like the Poison Eye mercenary group didn't dare to have any ideas about it. Therefore, they didn't have any business dealings with each other, but they also didn't have any enmity with each other. Basically, they were just acquaintances. May I know why young Master Chung has come to my Hong Merchant Association this time? After some small talk, Wei Xiaodong went straight to the point. Actually, it's nothing much. It's just that word has spread outside that the Equal Heaven Escort Agency has been extorted by shopkeeper Wei. That's why I'm here to pay you a visit, Chung Katian answered without hiding anything. Even Chen Zixio, who was behind him, couldn't help but put his hand to his forehead when he heard this answer, let alone Wei Xiaodong, the person involved. Was there something wrong with this guy's brain? Since he wasn't here to pick a fight, how could he speak like that in front of the other party? What do you mean by that, young Master Chung? As expected, Wei Xiaodong's expression darkened. He said unpredictably, This is the Equal Heaven Escort Agency's breach of contract. I've been doing everything according to the contract. These rumors were spread by the Equal Heaven Escort Agency themselves. How could you believe them, young Master Chung? Could it be that you're here to stand up for the Equal Heaven Escort Agency? That can't be right. As far as I know, young Master Chung and Qi Wenhan have always been enemies. They've always been sworn enemies. The grudge between the Equal Heaven Escort Agency and the Poison Eye mercenary group, especially the grudge between Qi Wenhan and Chung Katian. Any random local on the streets of Verdant Arc City could talk about it for 3 days and 3 nights. This was a well-known fact. Shopkeeper Wei is right. Qi Wenhan and I are sworn enemies. Moreover, we hate each other to the bone. If he doesn't die, then I'll live. Chung Jutian laughed heartily. Wei Xiaodong did not know whether to laugh or cry. If he doesn't die, then you live. Aren't you the one who is the last laugh? Everyone knows that you Young Master Chung will always suffer when you meet Qiwenhan. Is this confidence or stupidity? Then, young Master Chung, what are you here for this time? Wei Xiaodong's expression softened a little. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Even someone like Chen Ketian understood this principle. Naturally, he understood it as well. It's very simple. I want to join forces with Shopkeeper Wei to think of a way to trick the Equal Heaven Escort Agency again. Chen Ketian said excitedly. Every time he had a conflict with the Equal Heaven Escort Agency, he had always suffered losses at the hands of Qiwenhan. It was impossible to fight them head-on. However, this incident had given him some inspiration. If he wanted to deal with the Equal Heaven Escort Agency, Qiwenhan, and that Ling Yi, there was no need for him to fight them head-on. He could totally be like Wei Xiaodong and plot behind their backs. Oh! Wei Xiaodong's eyes instantly lit up.
His interest was piqued.
He immediately said, Come. Young Master Chung, please come into the inner hall. Let's discuss this properly. As matters stood, Wei Xiaodong's desire to deal with the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was even greater than Chen Ketian's. Even though he had managed to evade them for the time being, the other party still had a witness in their hands. To him, this was quite a hidden danger. If this witness were to fall into the hands of the Honging group, he would be in big trouble. It was a pity that although the Hong Merchant Association had quite a bit of influence in the Weyark territorial waters, they were only doing business. This included the guest experts who were stationed here. Their main job was to protect the Hong Merchant Association. Even as the shopkeeper of the branch, Wei Xiaodong could not easily order them around. It was even more impossible for him to make them do things that could not see the light of day. Moreover, Wei Xiaodong himself was too big of a target. Every move he made was watched. If he wanted to do something personally, it would be very difficult. He did not expect Chen Ketian to actually come to him. This young Master Chung had the Poison Eye mercenary group behind him. They were definitely the local tyrant. If he wanted to do something behind his back, they were the perfect partners. The two of them did not have much of a relationship to begin with. But after this, they actually felt like they were like-minded and regretted not meeting each other earlier. They could not wait to enter the inner hall to discuss in detail. From afternoon to night, they planned for a full 6 hours. Only then did the two of them walk out with smiles on their faces. Wei Xiaodong personally sent them off, and Chen Ketian returned satisfied. In the next few days, Lin Yi originally thought that after the previous incident, whether it was Wei Xiaodong's side or Chen Ketian's side, there should be follow-up actions. However, unexpectedly, these few days were calm and peaceful. There were no signs of anything unusual at all. Since the other party did not come looking for trouble, Lin Yi could not possibly take the initiative to find them by himself. Thus, he was happy to be idle. R655. Chapter 43-51. After all, the gathering of the escort agencies of the South Continent was about to begin, and Qiwenhan still needed his help. Even if Lin Yi wanted to go on an escort mission, he would not agree to it as the young master. As a result, Lin Yi stayed in the most luxurious guest room in the Equal of Heaven's escort agency. All he had to do every day was wait for Qiwenhan's people to gather information while he cultivated leisurely. Occasionally, he would think about Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao. He wondered how they were doing right now. In the vast ocean, a colossal ship rode through the wind and waves. It moved extremely quickly, but it was as stable as Mount Tai. Standing on it was as stable as land. More importantly, sitting on such a colossal ship was fearless of the wind, waves, and sea beasts. It was truly a leviathan on the ocean. This kind of huge treasure ship had always been the exclusive symbol of the superforces. It was impossible for ordinary sects and forces to have it, and they were not qualified to have it. This kind of strategic existence in the sea was not something that could be bought with a sky-high price of spiritual jades. Even if one had the financial resources to buy it, they would not have any stock to sell to you. The symbol of the Academy of Cultivation was carved on the flagship of the ship. The two words on it were particularly eye-catching, Morning Star. At this moment, two beautiful girls were sitting on the bow of the ship. After the originally fierce sea breeze passed through the protective shield of the huge treasure ship, it became a gentle breeze that blew their long hair. The gentle afterglow of the setting sun shone on them, leaving two beautiful silhouettes on the deck. It seemed real and illusory at the same time, making people feel intoxicated. On the huge ship were all the instructors and disciples of Morningstar Academy, including the 3 pillars of the mountain establishment period led by Ling Yuanqing. However, for the sake of safety, regular instructors and disciples were strictly restricted. They were not allowed to move around on their own unless there were special circumstances. Apart from a few members of the upper echelon of the academy and the staff who controlled the ship, there were only 2 people who could move about freely on the deck: Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao. Not only were they direct disciples of the divine nun of the East Sea, but their talent was also extremely shocking. More importantly, their talent was extremely heaven-defying. The entire Morningstar Academy saw them as the future hope. Their master, the divine nun of the Eastern Sea, doted on them. Ling Yuanqing, the dean, also doted on them. Compared to other people, they naturally had more privileges. On this treasured ship, the 2 of them could go anywhere they wanted at any time. However, if other disciples, or even instructors of the academy dared to wander around when the treasured ship was moving, they wouldn't dare to do so. He would definitely be arrested by the disciplinary squad at any time. At best, he would be confined for 3 years. At worst, he would be expelled from the academy. There was no room for negotiation. So there's so much going on between you and Lin Yi, Lil Sis Tao. Xinyan exclaimed as she looked at the beautiful sunset. Her heart was filled with longing. The time she spent with Lin Yi was too short. They were forced to separate not long after they met, so she didn't have time to listen to Lin Yi's experiences on Heaven's Stage Island. Over the past few days, whenever she had time, she would ask Huang Xiaodao to tell her about Lin Yi's matters. She had finally finished her story today. Yes, Sister Xianyan. Why don't you tell me about Lin Yi's life in the secular world? Huang Xiaodao asked expectantly. Xinyan wanted to know what Lin Yi had experienced on Sky Tier Island, but she wanted to know as well. She wanted to know what Lin Yi had experienced in the secular world. Lin Yi was a mysterious person. The more she knew about him, the more she couldn't see through him. The more she was curious about him, the more she felt that there was an endless story about him. It was fascinating. Okay, the first time I met Lin Yi was on a train. Oh, a train is a form of transportation in the secular world. I didn't know him at that time, but he left a deep impression on me. Wang Xinyan said, the corner of her mouth unconsciously curving into a beautiful smile. Now that she recalled the situation, a warm feeling welled up in her heart. It was full of memories. Why? Huang Xiaodao couldn't help but ask curiously. Because on the train, there were 3 people who saw that Lin Yi was dressed like a country bumpkin and he looked harmless. They thought that he was easy to trick, so they teamed up and set up a scam. They pretended that Lin Yi only had to give them 60,000, and they would give him the prize ring that was worth 80,000. Actually, the prize ring was fake, Wang Xinyan said with a smile. There are scammers like this in the secular world. If it was someone who likes to take advantage of others, they would really fall for it. But Lin Yi isn't that kind of person. He definitely wouldn't pay attention to them, Huang Xiaodao said with a face full of certainty. Huang Xiaodao said with a face of certainty. Even priceless treasures like the infant ginseng and star ink milk wouldn't make Lin Yi lose his mind, let alone this insignificant amount of money from the common world. You guessed wrongly. Lin Yi really did agree to it. I even reminded him secretly, but he acted as if he didn't notice and really gave the money to them. Wang Xinyan smiled slightly. No way? Huang Xiaotao was dumbfounded. It's true. It's just that after Lin Yi gave them the money, he took it back from them without anyone noticing. He even took an extra 30,000. Those 3 people were kept in the dark by Lin Yi the whole time. Maybe they still don't understand why they didn't have a single cent left after they got what they wanted, Wang Xinyan said with a smile. She couldn't help but smile every time she thought about it. She'd been worried for Lin Yi at the time, but she didn't know that he was so skilled and daring. He'd been fooling those 3 scammers from the beginning to the end. Hee, they deserved to be fooled by Lin Yi. I knew Lin Yi wouldn't fall for it. Xinyan sis, your first meeting with Lin Yi was so fun. Huang Xiaodao laughed so hard that she couldn't stand straight. She was a shy person, but perhaps it was because she shared the same interests as Wang Xinyan, but she was a lot more lively and cheerful when they were alone.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it, it's really unbelievable. Sometimes when fate comes, it can change a person's fate. Wang Xinyan sighed. I was just a normal girl. I never dreamed that I could cultivate, let alone come to Heaven-Tier Island. It's like a dream. Me too. If I hadn't met Lin Yi back then, I don't even know what I'd be like right now. I might have died on Mount Hutsai long ago, or I might still be struggling alone, drowning in the pain of my disfigurement. Huang Xiaodao sighed. Both of them had met Lin Yi, and their fates had changed abruptly. From this point of view, the two of them were quite similar. Xiaodao. A woman's voice came from behind them. It was the 2 girls' master, the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. Chapter 43-52. Master. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao stood up in a hurry and greeted her. The divine nun of the East Sea nodded with a smile. She held the 2 girls in each hand and felt rather happy inside. The 2 of them had been together all the time, calling each other sister and sister. They were so close that even she found it rather strange as their master. However, she did not think too much about it. After all, it was good for senior and junior sisters to be close. As their master, she could not ask for more. She felt that it must be because Wang Xinyan was too lonely when she trained with her in the academy. After all, she only had one direct disciple, and she didn't interact with outsiders. She didn't even have someone to talk to, and that was why she was so warm to Huang Xiaodao. The 2 girls were perfect companions. In a while, the ship will dock at Velvet City. Do you want to go for a walk, or do you want to stay in the inn and cultivate? Asked the divine nun of the East Sea. The reason why she asked this was because the 2 girls had no interest in going out at all during their previous stop, which was the second stop of the Morningstar Academy, the Devilish Sea Realm. They just stayed in the inn every day and talked about Lin Yi. The divine nun of the East Sea felt that the 2 girls were rather quiet. If they did not want to go out, she might as well arrange for a quieter place for them to stay. Velvet City? Master, I want to go for a walk when the time comes. Huang Xiaodao's eyes immediately lit up. Wang Xinyan also rejoiced and nodded. Unlike the Devilish Sea Realm, they should be able to see the Lin Yi they yearned for again, if nothing went wrong. Obviously, he would not stay indoors like he did in Devilish Cold City. Huang Xiaodao's intuition told her that Lin Yi must have returned to Weiwan City by now because he was coming back to hunt down Wu Baoliang, and more importantly, because he was coming back to find clues about Lu Bianren. Wang Xinyan had also heard about these things from her, and she was filled with anticipation at this moment.
Oh.
Then I'll find 2 people to protect you. I heard it's rather chaotic here. The divine nun of the East Sea nodded in some surprise. There were many powerful people in the academy. In order to protect her 2 precious disciples, she could easily find 20 people, let alone 2. It's fine, Shifu. We won't be walking around anyway. We're just looking around Velvet City. There are people from the academy everywhere. We won't run into any trouble. Xinyan and Xiaodao said in unison. The 2 of them wanted to go out for a walk purely to see Lin Yi secretly, and if there was someone following them closely, the 2 of them would be in trouble. Then how could they secretly date? Then, all right. But you have to be careful. If any blind people try to target you, you don't have to worry about anything. The divine nun of the East Sea hesitated before agreeing in the end. After all, just like what the 2 girls had said, Wayark City would be under martial law, and there would be experts from the Morningstar Academy everywhere. Even if an average person had 100 guts, they would not dare to cause trouble at this time. Besides, his 2 disciples were not weak, especially Wang Xinyan, who was at the early nascent soul stage. If they really fought, she would be able to defeat opponents who were at a higher level than her. Ordinary people would not be a match for her. Your disciple understands. Thank you, Master. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao immediately beamed with joy. They wrapped their arms around the divine nun of the East Sea as they eagerly awaited Lin Yi's figure in Velvet Arc City. 2 hours later, the huge ship finally docked in Velvet Arc City slowly. The many experts of the Morningstar Academy swarmed out and cordoned off the dock. The people who had gathered there a long time ago did not complain. Instead, they erupted into thunderous cheers. They had waited for a very long time. What's going on outside? Lin Yi had just finished cultivating for the day. As soon as he opened the door to his room for a breather, he heard the thunderous cheers outside. He could not help but be stunned. Walking into the courtyard, he could see the bustling scene of people crowding outside through the door. It was exactly the same as what had happened in Jinduan City. "Brother Ling, you've come out to join in the fun too?" Qi Wenhan walked over when he saw Lin Yi. "Join in the fun? Join in the fun for what?" Lin Yi was confused. Recently, he had been living a very simple life. He basically cultivated and consolidated his strength. At most, he would come out to see if the agency had heard anything about Wu Baoliang and Lu Bianren. He had not taken a single step out of the agency. He was basically cut off from the outside world, so he obviously had no idea what had happened. Brother Ling, you still don't know? The Morningstar Academy of the East Continent is here. They've come out to open the disciple selection. They have already stopped at the Zhenduan Sea and the Cold Devil Sea. Arway Arc Sea is the third stop. Qi Wenhan explained. The Morningstar Academy is here? Lin Yi only understood when he heard this. No wonder the scene outside was like this. After he understood, he could not hide the excitement on his face. Didn't that mean that he would be able to see Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao again soon? When they parted ways in Zhenduan City, Lin Yi thought that he would have to wait at least a few years to see the two girls again. He did not expect to see them again after just a month. This was a pleasant surprise. Lin Yi had always been calm and collected. Qi Wenhan had never seen him so excited before. Seeing this, he asked curiously, "Brother Ling, why are you so excited? Are you preparing to participate in the selection?" The East Continent was publicly recognized as the strongest of the 5 islands in heaven rank. Anyone with a bit of ambition would try their best to squeeze their way there, and the Academy selection was the best opportunity. Every time it happened, it would cause a sensation. Qi Wenhan did not find it strange that Lin Yi wanted to participate in the selection at all. Even he himself had been there before, but he was not chosen. Now that he had accepted the responsibility of managing the escort agency, he gave up on that thought. He was just here to watch the show. Of course not. I'm a disciple of the 3 pavilions in the north. After I finish my mission, I still have to return to the north. It's just that this is a rare opportunity, so I'm going to watch the show. Lin Yi smiled and shook his head. Just to watch the show? Qi Wenhan let out a sigh of relief. He was actually a little afraid that Lin Yi would be chosen by the Morningstar Academy. With his great potential to challenge those of a higher level, it was not impossible. At that time, there would be no one to help him participate in the South Continent Escort Agency Festival. Qi Wenhan paused, then reminded him, "You can watch the show, but Brother Ling, you must remember, when the staff of the Academy gives you the sign-up, you must not accept it. Otherwise, you will have to participate in the selection test. Once you pass the test, you will have no choice but to go to the Morningstar Academy. They will not give you any chance to back out." Lin Yi couldn't help but be taken aback. Wasn't it common knowledge that you couldn't just pick up a sign-up card? Only an outsider like him didn't know that, and he'd gotten himself into a pit by accident. Chapter 4353. Thinking back to the situation at that time, Lin Yi did not know whether to laugh or cry. Although there were no flashes of swords, it was the most dangerous and urgent situation he had encountered since coming to the South Continent. However, this outcome was not too bad. Huang Xiaotao had become the disciple of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea, and became the disciple that everyone envied. Moreover, she was with Wang Xinyan, so at least she would not be in danger. Just as Lin Yi was thinking about how to stay calm and avoid other people's eyes and ears to meet with the 2 women, Wei Xiaodong and Qin Ketian had started planning again in the Hong Merchant Association. "Shopkeeper Wei, now that the Morningstar Academy is here, the time you mentioned has come. You should tell me the specifics of the plan now. Ling Yi, that little brat, has been hiding in the Equal Heaven Escort Agency for many days now, Cheng Ketian said impatiently. Previously, when he and Wei Xiaodong had hit it off, he had added oil to the fire and blamed Ling Yi for the failure of the robbery incident. If Ling Yi had not interfered, the robbery plan would have been foolproof, and Qi Han would not have discovered it. Perhaps he had to thank Wei Xiaodong for being magnanimous and not pursuing the Equal Heaven Escort Agency's responsibility after receiving the compensation. As such, Wei Xiaodong naturally hated Lin Yi as well. After all, this was the truth. If not for Lin Yi, the pirate leader would not have been captured, and Qi Han would not have known the truth behind the scenes. Letting Wei Xiaodong deal with Ling Yi was what Cheng Ketian meant by killing with a borrowed knife. He knew that Ling Yi had the full protection of the Equal Heaven Escort Agency, and he could not do anything by himself. Only by borrowing Wei Xiaodong's power would he have a chance to avenge himself. However, with Wei Xiaodong's deep foresight, how could he be used by an idiot like Cheng Ketian? It would be the other way around, especially with his status. Even if he decided to deal with Lin Yi, he would definitely not do it himself. Cheng Jingtian's little abacus. Wei Xiaodong saw it clearly, but he did not expose it. Firstly, he really hated Ling Yi for ruining his plans and wanted to get rid of him as soon as possible. Secondly, he wanted to use this opportunity to get closer to the Poison Eye mercenary group. If he wanted to do any shady business in the future, they would be the best partner for him to work with. Young Master Cheng, don't be impatient. The Morningstar Academy is here, but I have yet to see my distant cousin. He is the key person to deal with Ling Yi. Wei Xiaodong said calmly. Distant cousin? Cheng Ketian couldn't help but stare blankly for a moment before asking, Shopkeeper Wei's distant cousin, could he be someone from the Morningstar Academy? That's right, he's not just a simple disciple in the Morningstar Academy. With his help, just a few words from him would be enough to make Ling Yi suffer a fate worse than death. Wei Xiaodong sneered. So powerful? Shopkeeper Wei, what exactly does your cousin do in the Morningstar Academy? Cheng Ketian was even more curious. Purchasing deacon, Wei Xiaodong said lightly as he personally poured tea for Cheng Jitian. Pooh. Cheng Ketian had just taken a sip when he spurted it out on the spot. He grimaced in pain and said, I thought he was some big shot, but he's just a purchasing deacon. What kind of big shot is he? Young Master Cheng might not know, but don't think that he's just a purchasing deacon. He's in charge of all the purchasing matters of the Morningstar Academy. The amount of power he has isn't something an ordinary person can imagine. Wei Xiaodong said with a profound expression. But even if that's the case, what does a purchasing deacon have to do with dealing with Ling Yi? Cheng Ketian still couldn't understand. Young Master Cheng, don't worry. Although he's a purchasing deacon and has nothing to do with dealing with Ling Yi, he has the authority to speak to the higher-ups of the academy. As long as he says a few words, even if Lin Yi doesn't die, he will. Wei Xiaodong said confidently.
Oh.
If that's the case, will he help? Cheng Ketian was still a little worried. Distant cousins were usually extremely unreliable. They were often extremely unreliable. When there was nothing going on, they could still befriend each other. However, if they had something to ask of them, they might just turn their backs on them. In this day and age, even blood brothers had to be wary of each other, let alone distant relatives who had nothing to do with each other. Of course, with my relationship with him, this matter is not a problem. Wei Xiaodong was extremely confident. With his experience, of course, he wouldn't be so stupid as to rely on such a simple relationship between distant relatives. But this distant relative was different. The two of them were closely connected and had a common interest. Before coming to the South Continent's Wei Arc territorial waters to be the branch manager, Wei Xiaodong was the deputy manager of the East Continent's Gaolin territorial waters Hong Family Chamber of Commerce. Furthermore, he had been in this position for a whole 5 years. It was also in these 5 years that he gradually drifted apart from Hong Zhong and the rest, and gradually walked towards depravity. The key person who led him to depravity was this distant cousin who worked as a purchasing deacon in the Morningstar Academy. One of them was in charge of purchasing, while the other was in charge of selling. After a chance encounter, they immediately discovered the huge benefits hidden within. The Morningstar Academy was such a transcendent force. Just the monthly purchases alone was an absolutely shocking astronomical figure, and the two of them were standing right on top of this astronomical figure. After the two of them got in touch, all of the Morningstar Academy's purchasing requirements fell on the Hong Family Chamber of Commerce. This did not seem inappropriate to outsiders. After all, the Hong Family Chamber of Commerce was a well-known Ding-rank chamber of commerce, and its reputation was unquestionable. However, what outsiders did not know was that during the monthly purchases, this purchasing deacon would always quote a high price to the Morningstar Academy, while Wei Xiaodong would quote a low price to the Hong Family Chamber of Commerce. The difference between the two of them was so huge that it would definitely make anyone jealous. Not only that, while Wei Xiaodong was stuffing his own pockets, not only was he not suspected by the Hong Family Chamber of Commerce, but because he had solidified the long-term deal with the Morningstar Academy, he was recognized by the higher-ups in the headquarters. After all, this was a bulk purchase. Even if he quoted a low price, the Hong Family Chamber of Commerce would only suffer a reduction in profits and would not suffer any losses. As long as they could make a small profit with a quick turnover, this in itself was a rare contribution. Moreover, if they could take this opportunity to build a good relationship with a transcendent force like the Morningstar Academy, it would actually be of great benefit to the Hong Family Chamber of Commerce. This was something that could not be bought with spiritual jades. On one hand, he was able to obtain a large amount of spiritual jades, and on the other hand, he was able to make a so-called heroic contribution to the Hong Family Chamber of Commerce. In these 5 years, Wei Xiaodong's days could only be described as a fish in water. He had even fantasized about directly being promoted from the branch's assistant shopkeeper to the branch's shopkeeper position. However, Wei Xiaodong's wish did not come true in the end. He was promoted to the branch's shopkeeper position, but not in the East Continent's Gaolin Sea, but in the South Continent's Wei-arc Sea. To be continued. Chapter 43-54. In order to prevent it from breeding, when one reached the level of a deputy manager with real power, one had to strictly implement the promotion policy. This had always been the iron rule of the Hong Consortium. Even the chairman had no right to violate it. No matter how Wei Xiaodong tried to find the higher-ups, it was of no use. This truly caused Wei Xiaodong to be extremely depressed. Even though his position had risen, he was unable to obtain a large amount of spirit jades from now on. After all, that distant cousin of his couldn't possibly come to the verdant arc sea to purchase resources, right? If he had known that this would happen, he would have stayed in the Gaolin territorial waters and become a lucrative deputy manager. Similarly, his distant cousin, who was the purchasing executive, also encountered trouble. Ever since Wei Xiaodong was transferred away, he no longer had an insider in the Hong Consortium. After all, the branch manager couldn't be like Wei Xiaodong, who could quote a high price for him while receiving a low price that was greatly discounted. The Hong Consortium had always been open and above board in doing business, with strict supervision. They would never engage in such shady business of falsely reporting prices. Only people like Wei Xiaodong, who were blinded by greed, would take the risk and do things sneakily. However, although the Hong Consortium couldn't continue to earn from the price difference, the purchasing executive could at least change to another consortium and find someone else to work with to continue filling his own pockets. However, it had nothing to do with Wei Xiaodong anymore. From the Gaolin territorial waters of the East Continent to the Wei-arc territorial waters of the South Continent, Wei Xiaodong suddenly felt a huge difference. If he hadn't experienced the days of earning a lot of benefits, it would have been fine. However, the problem was that this kind of thing was addictive. When a person got used to doing things unscrupulously, he would no longer be able to do so openly. Even if the salary of a branch manager was already very impressive to ordinary people, it was simply a drop in the bucket in the eyes of Wei Xiaodong, who was used to filling his own pockets. However, he didn't dare to openly make a move on the internal accounts of the Hong Consortium. Not to mention that the foundation he had established in the Wei-arc territorial waters was far from being able to cover the sky with one hand. Just the strict supervision of the Honging group made him not dare to make a move easily. At most, he could only take a roundabout way and take some benefits for himself. However, this ultimately couldn't satisfy his greed. In the end, he found another way to make use of the chaotic conditions in the South Continent's territorial waters to start a pirate business. Of course, it was impossible for Wei Xiaodong to become a pirate. For the sake of safety, he did not dare to keep pirates in private. Every time, he would only act as a mastermind behind the scenes, secretly contacting the pirates and taking back the goods himself. At the same time, he would demand huge compensation from the escort agency. Over the years, Wei Xiaodong had defrauded many escort agencies and clients. However, because he was extremely careful and secretive. Moreover, most of the escort agencies would try their best to minimize the problem in order to protect their reputation once they lost their goods. No one would take the initiative to compensate him and settle the matter in private. No one would make a big fuss and take the initiative to leak such a scandal to outsiders. Therefore, Wei Xiaodong had always been able to sit back and relax. Outsiders had no idea what he had done. They wouldn't even suspect him, except this time. Unfortunately, it was all because of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Wei Xiaodong never would have thought that the goods that he had obtained would be snatched back by Lin Yi. Moreover, he never would have thought that Qi Wenhan would be so convinced that he would bring people to look for him, causing a huge uproar in the city. In this way, even if Wei Xiaodong managed to get away with it this time, he would not dare to use the same trick to defraud others. Otherwise, no matter how slow the other party's brain was, they would still be able to come around and become suspicious. Furthermore, the escort agencies and clients that he had defrauded in the past, after seeing what had happened to the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, might even come to their senses and look for Wei Xiaodong to settle the score. Not only had he cut off his source of income, but he had also brought such a huge hidden danger to him. The main culprit of all this was that fellow called Ling Yi. If Wei Xiaodong let him off, he would not be called Wei Xiaodong. Wei Xiaodong and Cheng Ketian waited until the evening. When the people from the Morning Star Academy had checked into the inn, they could not wait any longer and went to visit his distant cousin, Qin Deli. The Morning Star Academy was high up in the sky. Even if Wei Xiaodong was the shopkeeper of the Hong Merchant Association, he could only wait outside the entrance of the inn after notifying Qin Deli. "Brother Wei, you've come at the right time. I was just about to go out and look for you." Qin Deli was extremely tall and sturdy. He looked like a crude and boorish man. Moreover, his actions were forthright and generous. It was hard to imagine that this person was actually the same as Wei Xiaodong, a businessman through and a black-hearted one at that. "Cousin is looking for me?" Wei Xiaodong was slightly stunned. "Yes, I have something to do. Let's go to your place. It'll be more convenient to talk." Qin Deli nodded. "All right, cousin, please." Wei Xiaodong immediately got someone to prepare a carriage and returned to the Hong Merchant Association. On the way, he introduced to Qin Deli. "Cousin, this is the young master of the Poison Eye Mercenary Group, young master Cheng Ketian." "Greetings, Senior Qin." Cheng Ketian did not dare to be negligent and hurriedly cupped his hands in greeting. Qin Deli nodded slightly, but did not say anything. As the purchasing deacon of the Morning Star Academy, he had his eyes on the top of his head. Not to mention a mere Cheng Ketian, even the entire Poison Eye Mercenary Group was just a country bumpkin who had never seen the world. He did not put them in his eyes at all. Cheng Ketian had never received such cold treatment before and was immediately filled with anger. However, he was not stupid enough to challenge such a person. After all, he was still counting on the other party to deal with Ling Yi, so he could only swallow his anger. The three of them arrived at the Hong Merchant Association and stepped into the inner hall. Not only did Qin Deli dismiss the servants, even Cheng Ketian, who wanted to follow them, was dismissed. Only then did he open his mouth and say, "Brother Wei, business is here. This time, we will stop at Weiwan City and all our supplies will be replenished here. So, the old rules." "All right." Wei Xiaodong was instantly overjoyed. Ever since he was transferred out, he had not had this kind of good business for a long time. Although it was only this time, he could still earn a lot from it. "Remember, do it cleanly. The partner I found in the East Continent is not reliable, and it seems like the higher-ups have already noticed something. Don't let them get hold of you. Qin Deli sternly warned. Cousin, don't tell me you're still worried about me handling things? Wei Xiaodong confidently patted his chest. Of course I'm worried about you handling things. Otherwise, why would I look for you? Qin Deli smiled. Previously, when Wei Xiaodong was in the Gaolan Sea, it was also the time when he had earned the most. Their cooperation was rather pleasant, but it was a pity that things did not go as he wished. Chapter 43:55. Thank you, cousin, for your care. Wei Xiaodong's heart skipped a beat and immediately said, Cousin, there's something I need your help with.
Oh, tell me about it.
But like I said, someone wants to investigate me. There are some things I can't help with. Qin Deli glanced at him. At that time, because of Wei Xiaodong, he had gained a lot of benefits. If it wasn't a difficult matter, he wouldn't mind helping him out. Of course, if it was a difficult matter, then it would be a different story. Cousin, don't worry, I'm just passing on a message. I won't make things difficult for you. Wei Xiaodong hurriedly said. Passing on a message? What message? Qin Deli asked curiously. Cousin, the Morningstar Academy is holding a selection. If you find a rare genius, can you recommend him to the higher-ups of the academy? Wei Xiaodong said with deep meaning. Of course. As long as it's a genius, not just me, any disciple of the academy has the right to recommend him. Qin Deli nodded his head and looked suspiciously at Wei Xiaodong. Brother Wei, don't tell me you've received a bribe and want me to recommend that Chinkatian? One look and you can tell that he's trash. Even if I recommend him, it'll be useless. The higher-ups can tell that there's something fishy going on.
No.
It's not him. I want you to recommend someone else. He's an escort from the local Heavens Equal Escort Agency. His name is Ling Yi. Wei Xiaodong shook his head. How powerful can a mere escort be? You still need me to help you recommend him? Qin Deli asked curiously. He's an early golden core stage expert, and he can kill an original infant stage expert. Cousin, don't you think he's powerful? Wei Xiaodong said with a profound expression. How is that possible? Brother Wei, you must be joking. How can there be such an expert in the world? Even Qin Deli was shocked. Then his eyes lit up as he said, Don't lie to me. If you're talking about this Ling Yi, he's really a genius. If I recommend him, it'll be a great achievement. Cousin, what I'm saying isn't false. One of young Master Cheng's servants outside was a peak early-stage nascent soul cultivator. In the end, he was crippled by this person. This is something that many people have seen with their own eyes. Just go to the dock and ask, and you will know, Wei Xiaodong said as he sipped his tea. When he first heard about this, he was really shocked. A mere expert in the early gold core stage was able to cripple someone at the peak of the early nascent soul stage. Anyone with a little common sense would find this kind of thing unbelievable. But it was also because of this. Only then would Wei Xiaodong comply with Qing Qitian's wishes. Compared to Qi Wenhan and the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, Wei Xiaodong would prioritize getting rid of this Ling Yi. After all, this kind of genius expert's growth potential was limitless. If he couldn't get rid of him before he became even stronger, then it would be too late to deal with him at that time. Is that true? As long as his spirit root wasn't too bad, it would be a sure thing for him to enter the academy. Brother Wei, quickly call this person over and let me see him. Qin Deli immediately said somewhat impatiently. This kind of genius only needed to be introduced to the higher-ups of the academy. With just the effort of opening his mouth, he could easily obtain a great merit. For him, who was already in a bad situation, this was a timely reign. Even if it was because of his merit, ordinary people wouldn't dare to have any ideas about him at this time. Cousin wants to see him? This is a bit difficult. Wei Xiaodong shook his head. What? You want me to introduce him, but you won't let me see him. Could it be that you want to be a rare commodity for yourself? Qin Deli's face immediately darkened.
Hey,
cousin, what are you thinking about? Am I that kind of person? Wei Xiaodong waved his hand repeatedly. With a bitter smile, he said, "It's not that I don't want you to see him, but this Ling Yi is my enemy." Enemy? Qin Deli was instantly stunned. With a strange expression, he looked at Wei Xiaodong up and down and said inexplicably, "I say, Brother Wei, have you been kicked in the head by a donkey? You want me to help you introduce an enemy? If this guy is really as heaven-defying as you say, aren't you afraid that after he enters the academy, his wings will harden and he'll turn around and attack you?" "I'm afraid. Of course I'm afraid. Even if this kind of person doesn't enter the Morningstar Academy, if I don't get rid of him as soon as possible, I won't be able to sleep well." Wei Xiaodong laughed coldly. "That's why I came up with this plan. I want cousin to help me, to invite him into the trap." "How do you invite him into the trap? Brother Wei, what are you thinking? Tell me in detail." Qin Deli was instantly interested. "All right, cousin, think about it. No matter who it is, if there's a chance to enter the Morningstar Academy, I'm sure they wouldn't reject it, right?" Wei Xiaodong changed the topic and asked, "That's natural. How many geniuses have broken their heads trying to get in, but were rejected at the door? Who would reject this kind of opportunity?" Qin Deli nodded and said, "That's right. That Ling Yi definitely wouldn't reject it. However, outsiders think of the Morningstar Academy as a holy land for cultivation. Not many people know that it's actually filled with danger, right?" Wei Xiaodong had stayed in the East Continent's Gaolan Sea for a whole 5 years, and he often went to the Morningstar Academy. He was very clear about the situation inside. That's right. Many of the newly accepted genius disciples have never thought that it's so dangerous inside. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many people dying in their first year. Qin Deli nodded and said, "So, as long as we send Ling Yi into the Morningstar Academy, it's actually equivalent to sending him into the tiger's mouth. At that time, cousin, you can spend some effort to secretly sow discord and let those tigers set their eyes on Ling Yi, this tender sheep. What will the result be?" Wei Xiaodong smiled proudly. "Of course he'll be ganged up on and die without a burial." Hearing this, Qin Deli finally understood. He patted Wei Xiaodong's shoulder and laughed. "Ha ha ha ha, Brother Wei, you really are a profiteer. You can even think of such a murderous plan. Furthermore, with the reputation of the Morningstar Academy there, even if they knew it was a trap, normal people would not be able to resist the temptation and jump in. That Ling Yi must have had 8 lifetimes of bad luck to provoke you. There's no other way. This hidden danger is too big. If I don't get rid of him, I won't be able to sleep." Wei Xiaodong smiled proudly and then said seriously, "I'll leave this matter to you, cousin. No problem. Not only will I be able to help you, but I'll also be able to get credit for it. This is killing 2 birds with 1 stone." Qin Deli laughed heartily. After the two of them finished discussing, Qin Deli was a little impatient. He immediately returned to the inn where the Morningstar Academy was stationed and solemnly requested to see the dean, Ling Yuanqing. Chapter 43-56. After hearing Qin Deli's report, even Ling Yuanqing was a little shocked. Of course, he invited the other 2 mountain opening stage giants over to discuss this matter together. A while later, the vice-headmaster Wei Hebei arrived first, followed closely by the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. However, there were 2 people behind her, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao. Whether it was Ling Yuanqing or Wei Hebei, neither of them found this strange at all when they saw the 2 girls enter as well. No matter where the divine nun of the East Sea went, she would always bring her 2 direct disciples with her. This was actually very normal. After all, she was not like Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei. She only had these 2 disciples. Moreover, their aptitudes and potential were all treasures of the academy, so it was normal for her to dote on them. As long as it wasn't a core secret, it wouldn't affect her to bring the 2 girls along, and it would also allow them to broaden their horizons. However, it was impossible for Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei to be like this. As men, they wouldn't be so meticulous in their considerations. The key was that they had too many disciples. Even personal disciples numbered more than 2 or 3. If they had to guide them at any time, they wouldn't be able to do anything else. After gesturing for everyone to take their seats, Ling Yuanqing said to Qin Deli. Tell everyone what happened just now.
Yes.
Qin Deli glanced at Xin Yan and Huang Xiaotao out of the corner of his eye, gulping. Headmasters, I've just learned that there's a local in Velvet Arc City called Ling Yi. He's very strong, able to kill a peak early-stage nascent soul practitioner with his early-stage golden core strength. What? Wei Hebei and the divine nun of the East Sea were both surprised. They asked in unison, Is that true? The Morning Star Academy was a place where geniuses gathered. Many of the disciples that walked out of the academy had the strength to challenge those of a higher cultivation level. This was not strange, but if this was to challenge someone of a higher cultivation level, then it was extremely rare. Even so, everyone knew that the so-called cross-realm battle was generally a peak late Jiedon stage, or a peak Jiedon stage master who fought against an early Yuanying stage master. After all, every realm was a qualitative change. Even if it was between the golden core perfection and the nascent soul realm, the difference was like a chasm. It was not something that a genius could challenge. Even in the Morningstar Academy, where geniuses gathered, there were only a few disciples who could reach this level. They were also as rare as phoenix feathers or unicorn horns. As for a mere master in the early stage of the gold core realm being able to challenge a master in the nascent soul realm, and it was a master in the peak of the early stage of the nascent soul realm. This kind of thing was simply a fantasy. Even Ling Yuanqing, the three giants in the mountain opening stage, had never heard of it. The mountain opening stage giants were shocked, but Huang Xiaotao and Wang Xinyan were even more shocked. This was because the Ling Yi that this person was talking about was the Lin Yi that the two of them had been thinking about day and night. The two women couldn't help but have strange expressions. They were still thinking about how to secretly meet up with Lin Yi. In the end, someone actually came to recommend Lin Yi first. He was really caught unprepared. It's absolutely true. At that time, this Ling Yi was at the dock and he crippled a peak early nascent soul stage expert. This incident was seen by many people. Our Morningstar Academy has always been thirsty for talent, so this disciple thinks that a genius like this shouldn't be buried and should be recruited into the academy as soon as possible, Qin Deli said politely. The three mountain opening stage giants looked at each other, and finally, Dean Ling Yuanqing opened his mouth and said, We really can't miss such a genius. With his powerful strength and methods, even if his spirit roots attribute is ordinary, as long as we create a false attribute for him, he will be a rare good seedling. What do you two think? That's right. The attribute of the spiritual root isn't everything. Some people have a bad spiritual root, but their potential is actually astonishing. Their future is limitless as well. This Ling Yi must be one of them. Wei Hebei's eyes shone brightly. He immediately became rather tempted. Out of the three mountain opening stage giants, he was the most passionate about accepting disciples. Basically, as long as it was a rather impressive genius, he would want to recruit them. The divine nun of the East Sea nodded in agreement, but she said nothing. No matter how much of a genius he was, she only accepted female disciples. This was the rule of the East Sea lineage. She would never go against it, so she was not as excited as Wei Hebei. Since the two of you agree, do you think we should make an exception and accept him? Although it's possible for this person to participate in the selection, there's still the possibility of him being left out, suggested Ling Yuanqing. Making an exception to recruit a genius was something that didn't conform to the selection rules. Originally, it was strictly forbidden. However, rules were dead, and people were alive. In front of a truly heaven-defying genius, all so-called rules could give way. However, this required the unanimous agreement of the three giants. I think that's how it should be. Special geniuses obviously need special treatment. Right now, the competition for genius disciples in the various academies has already heated up. Our Morningstar Academy can't fall behind. For a heaven-defying genius like him, it's not going to be too much even if we put down our pride and personally invite him. An expert in the early stage of the gold core realm was not worth mentioning, but this was an expert in the early stage of the gold core realm who could kill an expert at the peak of the early stage of the nascent soul realm. That was completely different. If he could take such a genius under his command, that scene would be wonderful. I have no objections, said the Divine Nun of the East Sea with a nod. The Divine Nun of the East Sea nodded as well. Although it was impossible for her to accept this disciple herself, she would be happy to see the Academy gain another supreme genius. All right then. Since the two of you agree, then it's settled. Ling Yuanqing immediately made up his mind. Afterwards, he asked, who's willing to lead the group? Even if such a heaven-defying genius was accepted into the Academy, regular instructors definitely would not have the right to teach him. He would only be able to become a disciple of the three mountain-opening giants. Whoever led the group this time would basically decide who Ling Yuanqing would become a disciple of. The Divine Nun of the East Sea looked at the two of them calmly. She did not say anything. As the headmaster, even if Ling Yuanqing was slightly tempted, he could not be so impatient as to set off personally. They still had to be courteous to each other. Why don't I go? Wei Hebei said rather eagerly. He was a straightforward person. Once he took a liking to someone, he would not care about the details. Ling Yuanqing sank into his thoughts for a while. He was rather hesitant. To be honest, he was rather tempted as well. This was already the third stop in the Sea of Verdant Arcs. The Divine Nun of the East Sea had accepted the astonishingly talented Huang Xiaotao from the previous two stops. Although Wei Hebei had not accepted such a genius with limitless potential, he had still accepted two honorary disciples. He was the only one who had gained nothing. Chapter 43-57. Now that they had finally found a genius, if they continued to be courteous like before and missed this opportunity, they would inevitably regret it. However, they had not even seen the person and had only heard Qin Deli's side of the story. If they were to fight with Wei Hebei over this disciple, it would be a little unreasonable. Deans, according to what I know, Ling Yi is still at the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency and has no plans to participate in the Academy selection. If only one of the deans were to lead the team, it would seem that our Academy is lacking in sincerity. However, if all three deans were to go together, then Ling Yi would not be able to refuse. Qin Deli suddenly interrupted. The reason for this suggestion was to ensure that Ling Yi would be able to enter the Morning Star Academy. On the other hand, if Ling Yi did not know how to appreciate kindness and refused, then it would be even better. At that time, the three heavyweights would definitely lose face, and if they were to lose face, then Ling Yi would definitely be the one to suffer. After all, the three of them represented the entire Morning Star Academy. If they did not give them face, then they would not give the Morning Star Academy any face. If this matter were to spread, the reputation of the Academy would definitely be affected. Whether it was for public or private reasons, they could not just let Ling Yi go like this. They might even flip out on the spot. Your words are not without reason. Ling Yuanqing nodded his head. He did not know what Qin Deli's intentions were, but these words were a good way for him to get out of this predicament. Not only did he not have to throw away his face to fight with Wei Hebei, but he could also personally see this so-called super genius killing two birds with one stone. I think it's fine. Wei Hebei did not think too much and immediately nodded his head in agreement. As for the Divine Nun of the Eastern Sea, he had no objections. It was just a trip. After the three heavyweights made their decision, they did not care that the sky was already dark. They immediately let Qin Deli lead the way, and the group set off for the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Qin Deli naturally accepted the order. Along the way, he also secretly sent someone to inform Wei Xiaodong and Cheng Jitian. He told them to go to the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency to watch the show. Young master, someone is coming. Seeing the group, the guard of the escort agency hurriedly informed Qi Wenhan. Who is it? Why are you so flustered? What a disgrace. Qi Wenhan was discussing business with a client. He couldn't help but frown and reprimand her. It's the headmaster of the Morning Star Academy, one of the three heavyweights, the guard stammered. What? This time, even Qi Wenhan's face was full of shock. He stood rooted to the ground, unable to move. After a long while, he finally reacted. He didn't even care about the customers beside him and hurriedly ran towards the door. Morningstar Academy's mountain opening period's 3 great heads, any one of them placed in the verdant arc territorial waters, would definitely be a super god. Even the leaders of the top forces here didn't have the qualifications to request an audience with them, let alone have them pay a personal visit. What day was it today? The 3 leaders of the mountain opening period had come together to visit a small heavens equal escort agency. Could it be that something had happened? Arriving at the entrance of the escort agency, Qi Wenhan saw the people who had come. Although Ling Yuanqing and the other 2 had restrained their auras to be no different from ordinary people, it was difficult to hide the extraordinary temperament of a grandmaster. Even if Qi Wenhan had never seen these 3 giants before, he could still recognize them at a glance. Among the crowd, Qi Wenhan also noticed the figures of Wei Xiaodong and Cheng Shutian, his 2 sworn enemies. His eyelids immediately twitched. His intuition told him that today's incident might be related to these 2 people. I am the young master of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, Qi Wenhan. Please forgive me for not coming out to greet you. Suppressing his various doubts, Qi Wenhan greeted the 3 giants politely. Forgive us for our intrusion. We've troubled the young master. Ling Yuanqing nodded indifferently. Not at all, not at all. The 3 of you are esteemed guests of our entire verdant arc territorial waters. To be able to visit our Heavens Equal Escort Agency is a blessing that we won't be able to obtain even in several lifetimes. Please come in. Qi Wenhan smiled apologetically in a flattering manner as he made people make arrangements in a hurry, inviting everyone into the reception room of the escort agency. Wei Xiaodong and Cheng Shutian mixed in with the crowd as they tailed the 3 giants. The corner of Qi Wenhan's eye twitched, but he could not chase them away in front of the 3 giants, so he could only turn a blind eye to it. Once everyone had entered the reception room and invited the 3 giants to sit down, Qi Wenhan's eyelids suddenly twitched again. Only now did he notice Huang Xiaodao beside the divine nun of the East Sea. He could not help but feel surprised and doubtful. However, because Huang Xiaodao had always been veiled, he was unable to confirm that they were the same person. He could only suppress his doubts. Actually, Cheng Shutian had seen Huang Xiaodao before out of everyone present. He had the same doubts as Qi Wenhan, but he did not think too much about it. These days, many female cultivators would wear veils to avoid trouble when they went out. It was very likely that it was just a coincidence. Young master, you don't come without a reason. We've come this time to see an escort from your esteemed agency. His name is Ling Yi. Ling Yuanqing cut to the chase. Ling Yi. Qi Wenhan was taken aback again. He glanced at Huang Xiaodao subconsciously before asking carefully, May I ask why you're looking for Ling Yi, Senior? I heard that Ling Yi's strength is startling, and he can challenge those at higher cultivation levels, so we've come to see him. If he's willing, we plan on taking him on as a disciple, Ling Yuanqing said straightforwardly. He's actually here to take on a disciple? Qi Wenhan immediately became even more puzzled. Ling Yi's strength was indeed ridiculously powerful. He could even cripple a peak early nascent soul cultivator like Old Kong, but there were not many people who knew about him so far. It was impossible for his name to have spread far and wide enough to alarm the 3 great pillars of the mountain establishment realm, right? Seeing Wei Xiaodong and Cheng Shutian's complacent and playful expressions, Qi Wenhan was even more certain now. It was definitely the 2 of them who were behind this. However, even though he knew this, Qi Wenhan did not dare to decline. After all, Ling Yuanqing had personally spoken. Let alone him, no one in the verdant arc territory would dare to say no.
Yes.
Please wait a moment, seniors. I'll send someone to invite Ling Yi over right now. Qi Wenhan nodded and shot a glance at Caretaker Song beside him. A while later, under the guidance of Caretaker Song, Lin Yi strode into the guest room. Ling Yuanqing, Wei Hebei, and the divine nun of the East Sea all looked at him at the same time. They all looked at one another rather strangely. Although they could not recall the exact details, the perception of the great pillars of the mountain establishment realm was not just for show. Even if they had only caught a glimpse of him at the crowded selection, they would still have an impression of him. Now that they saw Lin Yi again, they could not help but find him rather familiar. Chapter 4358. As for Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao, when they saw Lin Yi again, their eyes became extremely passionate. If there weren't so many people watching, the two of them would have already flown into Lin Yi's arms. Unfortunately, they couldn't do it now. They couldn't even speak and could only stand at the side and watch. As for Wei Xiaodong and Chen Ketian, they were laughing coldly and complacently without end at this moment. As far as they were concerned, since the matter had developed to this point, Lin Yi had no room to refuse at all, and he could only obediently jump into the trap they dug for him. Otherwise, if he dared make the three heads lose face in public, then he would immediately die a miserable death. Lin Yi glanced at the crowd in surprise. Before he could speak, Qin Deli had already taken a step forward and announced in front of everyone, Ling Yi, because you can challenge nascent soul stage experts and have amazing potential, you have received the appreciation of the 3 deans of our Morningstar Academy. We have decided to make an exception and accept you as a disciple. From today onwards, you will join our Morningstar Academy. This is a rare opportunity given by the heavens. You must grasp it well. Lin Yi was even more stunned after hearing this. After glancing at the 3 magnates, he looked at Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao. Seeing that the two of them shook their heads without batting an eyelid, he immediately knew that this wasn't their idea. But if it wasn't Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao, but someone else, why would they inexplicably recommend him to the 3 magnates of the mountain opening period? What was their intention?
How sharp was Lin Yi?
He immediately caught the slight exchange of glances between Qin Deli, Wei Xiaodong, and Chen Ketian. As expected, those who were unaccountably solicitous were hiding evil intentions. Since this person was in cahoots with Wei Xiaodong, it definitely wasn't a good thing. Who knew? There might be some conspiracy waiting for him behind the scenes. This kind of thing, Lin Yi naturally couldn't agree. If he really had this intention, he wouldn't have been put in a difficult position in Jinduan City. Why would he wait until now? 3 seniors. My aptitude is poor. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint the 3 seniors. Lin Yi immediately cupped his hands and rejected. Poor aptitude? This young hero Ling is too humble, isn't he? The matter of you crippling a peak early nascent soul realm expert at the docks is something that everyone can see. Now that the 3 of us academy heads have personally come to invite you, you're still purposely avoiding us like this. Isn't this a little unreasonable? Don't tell me you don't put our Morningstar Academy in your eyes? Qin Deli immediately seized the opportunity to provoke. Ling Yuanqing and the other 2 also frowned slightly. No matter what, this Ling Yi's rejection was too hasty and straightforward. He didn't even consider the most basic of things. It was indeed a little embarrassing. The expressions of the 3 heavyweights turned cold, and the atmosphere in the hall suddenly became tense and oppressive. Even Qi Wenhan was sweating on behalf of Lin Yi. This was different from Wei Xiaodong and Chen Ketian. If he really offended the big shots of the Morningstar Academy, his small heavens equal escort agency would not be able to protect Lin Yi. Everyone's gazes fell on him, but Lin Yi smiled faintly, not minding it. He pointed at Huang Xiaodao, who stood beside the divine nun of the East Sea, and replied calmly, "Don't tell me you've all forgotten. Back in Jinduan City, Junior Huang and I participated in the selection together. However, my aptitude was just too poor, so I was eliminated in the first round." Ling Yuanqing and the others already had a slight impression of him. Now that Lin Yi mentioned it, they immediately came to a realization. So it was him. If it were only Lin Yi, the 3 heavyweights of the mountain establishment period might not have paid attention to him, but back then, when they were stunned by Huang Xiaotao's exceptional aptitude, Huang Xiaotao had specially discussed it with her senior brother, so they obviously paid attention to him. Ling Yuanqing couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. From what he remembered, Ling Yi's spiritual root only had a single attribute of fire, so he was directly eliminated. Furthermore, he didn't have any outstanding performance during the selection. If he was really that powerful and could fight against an opponent of a higher realm, he would definitely have mentioned it on the spot and participated in the formation attack test. After all, the selection rules of the Morningstar Academy clearly stated that if he really had the strength to take on opponents of higher cultivation levels, he would still have a chance of entering the academy as long as he performed outstandingly in the formation attack test, even if his spiritual root was average. Ling Yuanqing remembered very clearly that Ling Yi had not requested to participate back then. Ling Yuanqing did not feel like Ling Yi was hiding anything at such an important event. Logically speaking, since he had come to participate in the selection, he definitely hoped to enter the academy. Moreover, he was with Huang Xiaodao, so he definitely did not want to be separated from her. If he could enter the academy, why would he have given up in the first place?
What's going on?
Ling Yuanqing turned his head to look at Qin Deli with a look of reproach in his eyes. The three heavyweights of the mountain establishment period had come here full of hope, but this was the result. This was too disappointing. Qin Deli immediately panicked. Originally, it was an impeccable situation, but he never thought that with just a few simple words, it would suddenly turn out like this. The Dean Ling Yuanqing's reproach was not something a small purchasing deacon like him could bear. Qin Deli was speechless, and could only turn his head to look at Wei Xiaodong and Cheng Jutian. His eyes were filled with anger and reproach. He originally thought that it would be a good thing to kill two birds with one stone, but he did not expect it to turn out like this. This time, he was really screwed over by these two fellows. Wei Xiaodong was also dumbfounded. He only wanted to deal with Lin Yi after listening to Cheng Jutian's words. He did not understand it at all, and it was even more impossible for him to know that there was such an inside story.
For a moment, he was also at a loss.
He pushed Cheng Jutian, who was beside him. This was his fault, so, of course, he had to clean it up. Impossible. When this fellow first came to the Wei Arc City, he clearly injured our Poison Eye mercenary group's Old Kong with the strength of the early Golden Core stage. He is a peak early nascent soul stage expert. Cheng Jutian was also anxious, and quickly jumped out to say. When Ling Yuanqing and the others heard this, their gazes then fell onto Lin Yi. They couldn't help but feel a little puzzled. Although they did not know Cheng Jutian, at least they could be sure that this person would not dare to lie in front of the three heavyweights of the mountain establishment period. Moreover, this kind of thing could definitely be found with other witnesses. In other words, this Ling Yi really had some reservations? For a moment, everyone's gazes were a little more scrutinizing. If this was really the case, then what Ling Yi's intentions were a little bit interesting. What he said is right. Lin Yi did not deny it, but immediately said, "It's just that at that time, I was working together with Junior Huang. With Junior Huang's heaven-defying talent, it is not strange for us to work together to defeat a peak early nascent soul stage expert." Chapter 43-59. And that makes sense. Ling Yuanqing and the other two mountain opening stage masters nodded their heads. They felt that there was nothing wrong with Lin Yi's answer. Huang Xiaodao was a super genius with dual fire and wind spiritual roots. She was also a golden core stage master who had a perfect breakthrough. Her strength was far from that of an ordinary golden core stage master. When the two of them joined forces, they were able to defeat a peak early nascent soul stage master. Although it seemed unbelievable to others, it was actually reasonable when they thought about it carefully. Impossible, Cheng Ketian hurriedly said. The first time, you two joined forces. But the second time, not long ago, you crippled Old Kong alone. How do you explain this? It's very simple. He was previously injured by me and Junior Huang. His injuries have not healed yet. Lin Yi smiled calmly and shrugged his shoulders. And when I was in the Zhenduan Sea, I accidentally obtained 2 golden cores. After consuming them, I leveled up. Moreover, it was unexpected. Is it strange that Old Kong was crippled by me? Everyone nodded their heads again. Because they knew Huang Xiaotao's heaven-defying talent, they also knew that Lin Yi's aptitude was mediocre. Therefore, they first thought that it was mainly because of Huang Xiaodao that he could injure a peak early nascent soul stage master, like Old Kong. Ling Yi was just there to make up the numbers. Even the second time they fought alone, it was definitely because Huang Xiaotao's injuries were too severe. After all, with Huang Xiaotao's super aptitude, it was not strange for her to defeat an opponent of a higher level. Moreover, Ling Yi himself said that the second time they fought, it was unexpected. It meant that the opponent must have underestimated him. With so many prerequisites, it resulted in the so-called early golden core stage killing a peak early nascent soul stage master. After analyzing all of this, it could only be said that Ling Yi was lucky, but it did not mean that he was really that heaven-defying.
What my senior brother said is true. I can testify to this.
At this time, Huang Xiaotao took the opportunity to stand out. Although she wanted to be with Lin Yi, since Lin Yi did not want to join the Morningstar Academy, she naturally had to find a way to help him. Naturally, she had to find a way to help Lin Yi escape successfully. As a direct disciple who is highly valued, Huang Xiaotao's words were clearly more trustworthy than a random passerby like Cheng Qitian. Not only did the divine nun of the East Sea trust her disciple completely, but Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei did not doubt her at all. Huang Xiaotao's words were basically the final conclusion to today's events.
No.
Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Originally, he was about to succeed, but in the end, everything was suddenly destroyed. Cheng Qitian was simply furious. He angrily pointed at Huang Xiaotao and said, "With this little bitch's strength, how could she possibly injure old Kong? Back then, when I wanted to capture her, she hid behind Ling Yi and trembled. She simply..." Before Cheng Qitian had even finished speaking, the atmosphere suddenly dropped to a freezing point. Everyone subconsciously held their breaths. The divine nun of the East Sea's icy cold voice rang out. "Who are you calling a little bitch? Who do you want to capture?" Only then did Cheng Qitian realize what he had just said. Immediately, cold sweat poured down from his head. He wanted to remedy the situation in a hurry, but it was already too late. The divine nun of the East Sea was a mighty figure of the mountain establishment realm, and she had always been very protective of her own. Why would she give an ant like him the chance to remedy the situation? Cheng Qitian was unable to say anything at all. He had only managed to utter a single word when he felt an icy cold, powerful pressure sweep over, blanketing the surroundings. It was like a lofty mountain that suddenly pressed down on top of his head, causing him to be utterly unable to catch his breath. The surroundings fell deathly silent. All that was left was Cheng Qitian's heavy breathing. The blood on his face surged, and his eyes exploded with viciousness. A while later, he suddenly vomited a great mouthful of blood and collapsed on the ground, dead. Wei Xiaodong immediately pissed his pants in fright when he saw Cheng Qitian's miserable death. Before anyone had noticed him, he retreated to a corner in a hurry, afraid to make a sound. Qin Deli was also frightened out of his wits as he cursed inside. He was tempted to grab Wei Xiaodong and give him 14,000 slaps. What kind of fucking idiot teammate did he find? It's fine if you're looking to die, but now I'm stuck in a tight spot as well. What am I supposed to do? It was not just the two of them who felt guilty. Even Lin Yi felt rather frightened when he saw this. Giants of the mountain establishment realm really were godlike existences. In the past, he had heard from that ghost that some powerful existences did not even need to do anything. They could kill you with a single glance. Lin Yi had thought that was a little exaggerated, but the sight before him had truly verified it. No matter how useless this Cheng Qitian was, he was still a genuine late-stage golden elixir realm expert. He didn't even move a finger, yet he was casually tortured to death. The strength of an opening mountain stage giant was indeed beyond imagination. Out of everyone present, only Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei remained unmoved. They did not care at all. An ant-like existence actually dared to call the direct disciple of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea a little bitch. Wasn't that just looking to die? The divine nun of the East Sea had always advocated purity, but her personal style was actually the classic example of using violence to curb violence. She was rather like the furious Buddha, especially when it involved her treasured disciple. Let alone killing a single person, it would already be very merciful if she did not destroy your entire family. Thank you for standing up for me, Master. Huang Xiaotao grabbed the divine nun of the East Sea's arm gratefully under Wang Xinyan's gesture. Xiaotao, remember this. No matter who it is that dares to harm you, feel free to tell me. I don't like killing people, but I don't mind killing people either. The divine nun of the East Sea patted Huang Xiaotao's hand gently before glancing at the corpse on the ground. She said indifferently, "Clean it up. Don't ruin everyone's mood." Yes, yes. Qi Wenhan was taken aback before nodding in a hurry. He got people to drag Qin Ketian's corpse out like a dead dog. At the same time, he secretly rejoiced inside. Qin Ketian had been his sworn enemy for many years. He had always been looking for trouble with him. However, Qi Wenhan had never dared to actually kill him because he was worried about the poison eye mercenaries. He never thought he would receive such a pleasant surprise today. Qin Ketian had died to the divine nun of the East Sea. Let alone avenging his son, his father, Qin Haonan, would probably piss his pants in fright. He was afraid that she would destroy the entire Poison Eye mercenaries if she was displeased. The Poison Eye mercenaries had always been strutting around the Verdant Arc Sea, but they only did whatever they wanted. Before a mountain establishment giant like the divine nun of the East Sea, resistance was nothing. Their life and death were completely up to her.
Speak.
What happened exactly? Ling Yuanqing turned to Qin Deli again. Chapter 4360. Although this Lord Dean didn't have the intention to kill, Qin Ketian's mistake was placed in front of him, and Qin Deli was almost scared to the point of collapsing. He looked at Wei Xiaodong, who was hiding in the corner, and stammered, I heard this from shopkeeper Wei, so I came to report it to the dean." Everyone's gaze landed on Wei Xiaodong. No matter how much Wei Xiaodong hid in the corner, he could only brace himself and stand out. "I actually heard it from Qin Ketian, but he's already dead. I didn't think he was this kind of person," Wei Xiaodong explained with an embarrassed expression. "In the end, you're blaming it all on a dead person?" Ling Yuanqing couldn't help but feel somewhat annoyed. Qin Deli and Wei Xiaodong were immediately frightened when they heard this. If this big shot was as angry as the divine nun of the Eastern Sea, then the two of them would really have to accompany Qin Ketian. However, Ling Yuanqing was the dean of the Morningstar Academy after all, and he wasn't like the divine nun of the Eastern Sea who had her reverse scale touched. He wouldn't casually kill people, so he didn't plan on looking into this matter any further. There was no point. He knew Wei Xiaodong. Back when he was a vice shopkeeper in the Gaolin Sea of the Eastern Continent, he often went to the Morningstar Academy. Now that he was a shopkeeper in the Weiarc Sea, he was still a member of the Hong Merchant Group. Ling Yuanqing wouldn't go so far as to make a move on someone from the Hong Merchant Group over such a small matter. Since that's the case, let's go back. Ling Yuanqing finally spoke. At the side, Wei Hebei let out a regretful sigh. He had come full of hope, but in the end, he had returned empty-handed. The so-called super genius that could instantly kill someone of a higher realm, but in the end, he had made such a blunder. How could he endure this? However, regret was regret. The truth had already come to light. The three of them were great figures of the mountain opening stage, so they couldn't stay in the tiny Heaven's Equal escort agency for too long. Otherwise, they would be seen by outsiders who didn't know what kind of relationship the Morningstar Academy had with the Heaven's Equal escort agency. The group stood up immediately, but Xinyan spoke up instead. "Master, Xiaotao is Master Ling Yi's junior, and we've worked together in the Equals escort agency before. It'd be a little unreasonable to let her go back with us like this. Why don't I stay with Xiaotao and treat them to a meal? It'll be a final farewell. All right, then when you go back tonight, I'll tell you something. Be careful on the road." The divine nun of the East Sea nodded in agreement. She had always doted on her two disciples, so she obviously would not turn down such a reasonable request. "Don't worry, senior. Our escort agency will escort them back together," Lin Yi quickly said. "That's right. Although our Equal Heaven escort agency is only a small escort agency, we still have some deterrence in a place like Velvet Arc City. We won't let anyone spoil the mood of the two young ladies," Qi Wenhan also guaranteed. "And I'll have to trouble you then. The divine nun of the East Sea nodded before leaving with Ling Yuanqing and the others. Lin Yi and the others saw them off at the entrance. Only then did he turn around. Brother Ling, I was wondering why escort Huang didn't return. I was worried that something might have happened to her and didn't dare to ask you about it. Who would have thought that he would be chosen by the Morningstar Academy to become the personal disciple of the godly nun of the Eastern Sea? Brother Ling, you're too mean, not even telling me about this kind of thing. Qi Wenhan pretended to grumble as he patted Lin Yi's shoulder. Hee. Brother Qi, you never asked me before, so I couldn't bring it up. Otherwise, people would think I was showing off or even bragging. Lin Yi smiled. If it were anyone else, they would be eager to let the entire world know if their junior sister managed to climb up the social ladder and become the personal disciple of the divine nun of the East Sea. However, with his low-key personality, why would he do something like that? Not to mention that in terms of strength, potential, and heritage, Lin Yi was definitely a first-rate existence, and this was just him being humble. Other people would treat a major figure of the godly nun of the East Sea with reverence, but he would only look up to her at most. There would be a day when he would stand shoulder to shoulder with her, or even surpass her. As a result, he obviously did not believe that Huang Xiaotao was climbing up the social ladder by becoming her disciple. At most, he felt that the divine nun of the East Sea would not mistreat Huang Xiaotao. That's true. Escort Huang has never said anything before, so those who don't know really find it hard to believe. Qi Wenhan chuckled and said excitedly, "This is a joyous occasion. We have to celebrate it properly." Today was a joyous day for him and the entire Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. The arrival of the three major figures of the godly sect was enough to make the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency famous across the entire South Continent, or even in the upcoming Escort Agency gathering. However, what made Qi Wenhan even happier was that Chen Ketian was dead, and he had died to the hands of the divine nun of the East Sea. He had endured this guy for a very long time, but he could not do anything about it. He never thought that he would be able to eliminate a great rival without any warning. Even the legendary pie falling from the sky could not compare to this. Moreover, Huang Xiaotao, who had always been missing, had actually become the personal disciple of the divine nun of the East Sea in the blink of an eye. This meant that as long as the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency maintained a good relationship with Ling Yi, they would also be able to rope in this super genius of the Morningstar Academy. He did not dare to say that he would be able to make the divine nun of the East Sea look at him in a different light, but even so, this was still an extremely enviable network. After all, a super genius that even the three major figures of the Morningstar Academy valued so much meant that he was destined to have a bright future ahead of him. Who knows, he might even be able to lean on a big tree and enjoy its shade. After listing all these good things, Qi Wenhan felt that he was simply blessed with good fortune. In the end, all of this was brought to him by Lin Yi. He immediately felt that he was really smart. Fortunately, he had taken a liking to Lin Yi at the docks back then, which was why he had so many good things coming his way today. Otherwise, not to mention so many good things, just the previous robbery incident alone would have kept him in the dark from the beginning to the end. Who knows? He might even be a fool now, being played around by that old fox Wei Xiaodong. Brother Ling, accompany the two ladies and chat for a while. I'll go arrange a banquet and treat you both to a good meal. Qi Wenhan said excitedly. After excusing himself to the two ladies, he personally led his men to arrange the banquet. Then let's go to my room for a while. Lin Yi smiled as he brought Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao to his room. After all, this was the best guest room in the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, and the decorations were quite elegant. There was a small living room in the room, just enough for the three of them to talk. As soon as they got back to the room, the two girls could no longer hold themselves back. One on the left and the other on the right, they flew into Lin Yi's arms. The three of them hugged each other, and there was no physiological impulse that would make one blush. Instead, there was a faint but lingering sense of warmth, as if they were reuniting with family. Chapter 43-61. How have you two been recently? Lin Yi asked with a smile after the three of them hugged each other quietly for a long time. Yes, Big sister Xinyan treats me better than a real sister. Master also loves me very much. No matter what happens, he dotes on us, as if we were his own daughters. You saw it just now, Huang Xiaodao said with a blissful expression. She originally thought it would be very hard to be separated from Lin Yi, but both Huang Xinyan and the divine nun of the Eastern Sea made her feel like home. Even if she missed Lin Yi all the time, her days were not as difficult as she imagined. On the contrary, she was very happy these days. Since her parents died when she was a child, she was forced to stay with relatives. Everyone around her treated her like a commodity rather than a child. Even after they found out that she had a good aptitude for cultivation, she was just a rare commodity that could be hoarded. They never really cared about her. But now, not only did she have Lin Yi, she also had a gentle sister like Huang Xinyan and a motherly master like the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. Huang Xiaodao was a very contented person. She already felt very happy to have so many people care for her. She would not ask for more. Lin Yi glanced at Huang Xinyan gratefully. He was secretly glad that all his women were so nice. Otherwise, it would be a headache if one of them got jealous easily. Huang Xinyan naturally knew what Lin Yi was thinking. She rolled her eyes at him flirtatiously, but then she couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. She had always been kind to others. Moreover, Huang Xiaodao got along so well with her. She would naturally treat Huang Xiaodao well from the bottom of her heart. Perhaps Huang Xinyan herself didn't realize that she was so understanding and magnanimous. Instead, it would make Lin Yi like her more, value her more, and love her more. Let's not talk about the two of us. How are you? You seem to be in trouble again? Huang Xinyan asked with concern. Although she did not know what Wei Xiaodong and the others were planning, this incident seemed to be a conspiracy no matter how she looked at it. If Lin Yi had not handled it properly just now, it might have been a disaster. Fortunately, the result was not bad. Not only did they not succeed, he even brought the other party into the picture. It is indeed a little troublesome, but it is not a big problem. I can handle it, Lin Yi said with a smile. It was rare for him to reunite with the two girls, and he didn't want to say anything that would dampen the mood at such a good time. Moreover, with his own strength, he was indeed able to deal with it.
Tell us.
Are you going to tell us the good news and not the bad news in front of us? Then we'll do the same thing in the future. I won't tell you, no matter what trouble I'm in. Xinyan pursed her lips. Yes, I learned it from you, Huang Xiaodao added. I say, you two have only known each other for a few days, and you're already on the same side? Lin Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He could only surrender and said, well, there's nothing else anyway.
I'll tell you about it.
That's a good boy. Huang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao were finally satisfied. They hugged Lin Yi's arms and sat down, indicating for Lin Yi to speak quickly. This time, they suddenly recommended me to the big three of the academy. It is certain that Wei Xiaodong and Chen Ketian are behind it. I believe you can see this, Lin Yi said. It is not strange that Chen Ketian is behind it. We have a grudge with him before, but Wei Xiaodong is the manager of the Hong Chamber of Commerce's branch, and he is Hong Zhong's old friend. There is no enmity between them, so why would he want to deal with you? Huang Xiaotao asked curiously. It can't be said that there is no enmity between them. At least from his point of view, I spoiled his plans, so he bears a grudge. Lin Yi smiled faintly. Spoiled his plans? What plans? Huang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were instantly even more curious. Xiaodao, do you remember when we were on a mission and were robbed by 4 pirates? I told you that there was something fishy about it. Actually, the fishy thing was that these pirates were hired by Wei Xiaodong himself. Lin Yi laughed coldly. He found someone to take back his own goods, and at the same time, he extorted a large sum of spirit jades from the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. It was a total of 300,000 spirit jades. Compensate according to the price.
Ah!
This person is actually so black-hearted? Huang Xiaodao couldn't help but be speechless. She was different from Huang Xinyan. Because she knew that Wei Xiaodong was Hong Zhong's old friend, she had a preconceived impression that Wei Xiaodong was a good person. That is the truth. If I hadn't caught those 4 pirates by chance, I wouldn't have believed that Wei Xiaodong was actually such a person. You still don't know that the goods that he took back were life-saving goods for the Fong family on Rock Island. This is a life-saving item for the hundreds of people in the Fong clan village on Rock Island. Otherwise, they would not have been able to escape this time. Lin Yi sighed. What happened after that? After you caught the pirates and caught them red-handed, he couldn't deny it, could he? Wang Xinyan asked. Although we caught them red-handed, this old fox is cunning and stubborn. Even if we brought witnesses to confront him, he would insist that it was false. After all, he was the manager of a branch of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. We couldn't force him, so we couldn't do anything to him. Lin Yi shook his head. So you're saying that the Heavens Equal Escort Agency was cheated of 300,000 spirit jades by him, but they could do nothing about it? Wang Xinyan asked in surprise. Everyone in the agency is helpless, but that is the truth. I can only say that people change. This time, even Hong Zhong was wrong about him. Lin Yi spread his hands and said, This Wei Xiaodong is really bad. He disregarded the lives of hundreds of people. Not only did he frame the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, but he also framed you this time. We can't let him go so easily. Even with Huang Xiaotao's gentle personality, she was filled with righteous indignation after hearing this. She turned to Wang Xinyan and said, Sister Xinyan, why don't we ask Master for help and punish him? She knew that Lin Yi was going to stay in the Weiark territorial waters for a while. If she didn't get rid of this threat, Wei Xiaodong, as soon as possible, she wouldn't be at ease leaving. Moreover, the Morning Star Academy had a high status. If the godly nun of the Eastern Sea personally intervened, no matter how cunning Wei Xiaodong was, he wouldn't dare to argue in front of a mountain-opening period giant. Wang Xinyan was a little hesitant. After staying in the Morning Star Academy for more than a year, she knew more than Huang Xiaodao. She shook her head slightly and said, Sister Xiaodao, although the Academy has a high status, we can't ruin our relationship with a top chamber of commerce like the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Otherwise, we'll be in a passive position in the future. After all, we don't have any relations. Even a mountain-opening period giant like our master can't casually punish someone from the Hong Chamber of Commerce. This is a big taboo. Didn't you see that Dean Ling was very angry just now, but he still let Wei Xiaodong go? Chapter 4362. Huang Xiaotao was simple-minded, but the sects did not interfere with each other. This was the most basic rule of the pugilistic world. She said awkwardly, Then what should we do? Are we just going to let Wei Xiaodong continue to roam freely? That's too infuriating. Wang Xinyan was also in a difficult position. She was the same as Huang Xiaotao. Of course, she wanted to help Lin Yi get rid of Wei Xiaodong before she left. But if she went to ask her master for help, it would put him in a difficult position. What should she do? You two are too stubborn. Who said that you have to ask your master to deal with Wei Xiaodong? Someone like Wei Xiaodong, is he worthy of a mountain-opening stage powerhouse to deal with him personally? Lin Yi said with a smile as he looked at the awkward expressions of the two girls. But with just the three of us, are we going to force our way in? If we don't have a good reputation, it won't be so easy to break into the Hong Merchant Association. Wei Xiaodong is a sly old fox. Who knows, he might bite back at us. Wang Xinyan said worriedly. She knew that even if it was a branch, the Hong Merchant Association would definitely have a guest expert overseeing it. They couldn't just barge in. If they didn't have a good reputation, once things got out of hand, they would be attacked by Wei Xiaodong instead. That's not necessarily true. The Academy can't deal with Wei Xiaodong, but I can. Lin Yi smiled mysteriously. Ah! Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were stunned and looked at each other. Xiaotao, have you forgotten? I seem to have mentioned it to you before. I'm not an outsider in the Hong Merchant Association. I'm one of them. I'm their honorary vice president. Lin Yi said with a smile. That's right. Huang Xiaotao suddenly remembered. Because this was just a title, it was usually not used. If Lin Yi hadn't mentioned it, she wouldn't have remembered it. Honorary vice president? Wang Xinyan's eyes lit up. That's great. This position doesn't have any real power, but it's a good position. However, his status is there, and his authority to speak is unquestionable. Coupled with the evidence in his hands, it is perfect to deal with a branch manager like Wei Xiaodong. That's right. Wei Xiaodong is a man who has committed heinous crimes. I can't let him continue doing as he pleases. Even from the perspective of an honorary vice president, I have to do my part for the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Lin Yi made up his mind. If I want to deal with Wei Xiaodong, the first thing I'll have to do is take over the ARC branch from him. That's why I need the two of you to help me. How can I help? Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were raring to go. Neither of them liked to fight, but they couldn't wait to deal with Wei Xiaodong for Lin Yi. It's very simple. Come with me to deal with the guest expert there. If there is no accident, Wei Xiaodong himself is a nascent soul stage expert, and when the time comes, he will certainly not let himself be captured. They will definitely incite the other foreign dignitaries to deal with us. In order to prevent things from getting out of hand, we must end the battle as soon as possible, Lin Yi analyzed. Okay. Huang Xiaotao nodded happily, without another word. She was already used to doing whatever Lin Yi said. Let alone controlling the Arc Rose branch. Even if he burned it down, she would probably do it. She would probably do as he said. Okay, got it. Wang Xinyan thought for a while and nodded as well. She was more sensitive than Huang Xiaodao, so she naturally considered more things, such as the feasibility of doing this and the consequences it would bring to Lin Yi. Of course, Lin Yi's matters were her matters. She would definitely not just stand by and watch. However, she had to think clearly before taking action. So far, Lin Yi's method should be the most direct and effective. Huang Xiaodao had already told her before that their combined attack could easily kill a nascent soul cultivator. As for Wang Xinyan herself, she was an early nascent soul cultivator and a direct disciple of the divine nun of the East Sea that she had raised with great care. Killing a nascent soul cultivator was nothing difficult for her. According to common sense, the guest experts assigned to each branch by the Hong Chamber of Commerce were all at the original infant stage, but the number would not be too many. Even in a large branch like the North Island, there would only be 4. In a small branch like the Sea of Crescenarch, there would only be 2 at most. Therefore, if there were no accidents, the success rate of quickly ending the battle was very high. Other than that, the Morning Star Academy was like a tiger and a wolf. No matter when or where, it would never be forbidden for the disciples to fight. On the contrary, all the rules and regulations tended to encourage the disciples to compete, and this so-called competition, in other words, was to cause trouble. Under the encouragement of such an atmosphere, the disciples of the Morning Star Academy caused a lot of trouble outside. As long as they did not poke a hole in the heavens, as long as they were able to take responsibility, the Academy would never blame them. Compared to the other disciples who would get restless if they did not do anything every day, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were definitely obedient. Causing trouble occasionally was in line with the temperament of the Academy. Moreover, even if the two of them took action, they had the protection of the towering divine nun of the Eastern Sea, so there would not be any problems. From a certain perspective, as long as the two of them took action with Lin Yi, it would be equivalent to pulling Lin Yi under the protection of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea as well. Even if something happened, they would not have to worry about it. Lin Yi had always been a man of action. After the 3 of them made up their minds, they only got the guards outside to inform Qi Wenhan. They did not say what they were going to do, and they directly rushed to the Hong Merchant Association. By now, it was already dark, and there were not many customers. The Hong Merchant Association was just about to close for the day, but in the end, Lin Yi directly rushed in with the 2 girls. "Sir, our shop has already closed for the day. Please come back early tomorrow." The employee hurriedly stopped them. "Come back early?" Lin Yi could not help but laugh when he heard that. He glanced at the employee and said playfully, "Do you think it's time to line up to cause trouble? It's none of your business. Hurry up and call Wei Xiaodong out. You won't be able to handle this today." Cause trouble? The employee was taken aback. He had been in the Hong Merchant Association for so many years, but he had never seen anyone who dared to cause trouble. Even the most notorious poison eye mercenaries did not dare to do so. However, sensing the auras of experts from Lin Yi and the other two, the employee immediately did not dare to say anything else. This was indeed not something he could handle. He ran into the inner hall in a hurry and called Wei Xiaodong out. Wei Xiaodong was originally drinking tea to calm himself down. What happened at the Equal Heaven Escort Agency had truly scared him silly. In particular, when Ling Yuanqing flew into a rage at the end, he, the manager of a branch of the Hong Merchant Association, had been so frightened that his legs had turned to jelly, and he had almost knelt down on the spot. Today, he had truly taken a trip to the gates of hell. Chapter 4363. It's all that idiot Chen Ketian's fault. He's hopelessly stupid. Not only did he seek his own death, he almost dragged me down with him. I must have been blind to work with such an idiot. Wei Xiaodong was still feeling gloomy and afraid when he saw the shop assistant running in with a panicked face, claiming that someone was here to cause trouble. What are you guys doing? Wei Xiaodong hurriedly followed the shop assistant out. After seeing Lin Yi and the others, he was stunned. What are we doing? Lin Yi looked at him, crossed his arms, and smiled. That depends on how you interpret it. We're here to investigate you, Shopkeeper Wei, for breaking the law. Of course, from your point of view, we're here to cause trouble. You're right, Shopkeeper Wei. They were really fucking wrecking the place. Wei Xiaodong's mouth twitched. He could ignore Lin Yi, but he did not dare to underestimate Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao. These two were the direct disciples of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. If he offended them, it was equivalent to offending the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. That was not a joke. Chen Ketian's tragic death was a living example. Therefore, even if the other party said that they were causing trouble, as long as the situation did not develop beyond control, Wei Xiaodong could only pretend that he did not hear it. Investigating me for violating the law? Wei Xiaodong pretended to be shocked. Did I hear wrongly? Although your Morningstar Academy has a high status, there's no reason for you to interfere with the Hong Merchant Association's business. I'm afraid this is against the rules, right? Do the seniors in the academy know what you're doing? Moreover, what have I done to violate the law? A series of rhetorical questions, coupled with Wei Xiaodong's shocked and innocent expression, could easily fool a normal person. However, Lin Yi and the others obviously did not care about him. You're right. The Morningstar Academy cannot interfere. They have no reason to interfere with you, but I can. As Lin Yi spoke, he suddenly took out a beautiful purple gold jade pendant. The words Hong Merchant Association could be vaguely seen in the center of the jade. The others did not understand, but Wei Xiaodong only took a look, and his expression changed. He was immediately stunned. This was an extremely rare purple gold jade. Even though it was just a small piece, it would fetch at least tens of thousands of spirit jades in an auction. Or even more. Wei Xiaodong had seen many good things, but the problem was that this purple gold jade pendant had a special meaning in the Hong Chamber of Commerce. In the Hong Consortium's Chamber of Commerce, as long as one was a high-ranking member of the vice president level, they would all have a jade pendant that could prove their identity. The president was Mo Jinyu. The vice president was Lan Jinyu, and this purple Jinyu represented the non-staff higher-ups who had made special contributions to the Hong Chamber of Commerce. In other words, he was the honorary vice president. Because these three types of golden jades were extremely rare, and the Hong Chamber of Commerce's unique array was specially set up inside, it was impossible for outsiders to imitate it. Therefore, as long as he took it out, no matter which branch he went to, it would be enough to prove his identity. However, the existence of the purple gold jade pendant in the Hong Clan Chamber of Commerce could only be clearly told to those who had reached the level of a branch manager. As for ordinary guest experts or ordinary workers and manservants, they might not be able to see it in their entire lives due to their low level. Most of them knew nothing about this. What exactly do you want? Wei Xiaodong's eyelids twitched uncontrollably. He asked calmly, as he quickly thought of a way to deal with it. He had acquaintances in the headquarters and knew that Hong Zhong had recently been promoted to vice president. At the same time, there was also an honorary vice president. However, he never expected that Lin Yi was actually this mysterious honorary vice president. Hee. Manager Wei seems to be someone who knows his stuff. You know what this purple gold jade pendant represents? Then I won't beat around the bush. As the honorary vice president of the Hong Clan Chamber of Commerce, I announce that I am taking over this branch. Everyone, including Wei Xiaodong, will be investigated by me. Lin Yi announced loudly. There was an uproar in the Hong Clan Chamber of Commerce. Everyone looked at each other. What was going on? Why did an honorary vice president suddenly appear and want to investigate the entire branch? Not only the staff. Even the two foreign chamberlains who were in charge of this place had shock in their eyes. They did not know about the purple gold jade pendant, but at least they knew that the honorary vice president was indeed someone who could take over the entire branch at a critical moment. Wei Xiaodong saw everyone's reaction and panicked. He knew that he had to react quickly. Otherwise, once everyone accepted this fact, he would never be able to turn the tables again. Men, arrest this fella who is pretending to be the honorary vice president. Wei Xiaodong made a prompt decision and shouted, "This person is clearly called Ling Yi, a mere escort from the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. How could he be the honorary vice president of the Hong Clan Chamber of Commerce? The name on this jade pendant is clearly written as Lin Yi. This person is pretending to be a senior member of the headquarters. He must have ulterior motives." As soon as he said that, everyone looked at Lin Yi suspiciously. What kind of person was the honorary vice president? Why would he be a lowly escort at the Equals Escort Agency? Wei Xiaodong was right. This person was an imposter. One of them was the shopkeeper of his own branch, an absolute superior. The other was a lowly escort from the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency, a nobody. To the people present, it was clear at a glance who they should trust. There was no need to hesitate at all. However, for the other ordinary staff, no matter who they believed, it would not affect the outcome. This was because they were weak and would never participate in battles. On the heavenly stage island, no matter what happened, the only thing that could truly decide the outcome was strength. Only the person with the biggest fist would be able to laugh at the end. Wei Xiaodong was well aware of this. Hence, his words were not directed at the others, but at the two original infant stage guest experts. With that, the two guest experts believed him as expected. They immediately unleashed their qi and stood to the left and right of Lin Yi's group, eyeing them covetously. Together with Wei Xiaodong, who was also an original infant stage expert, they had already surrounded Lin Yi's group. Once they began fighting later, they would have the advantage just by standing there. Ling Yi, even if you really can deal with original infant stage experts, there are 3 original infant stage experts here, including me. Do you really think you can do anything to me? Wei Xiaodong sneered and refused to give up. I'd advise you to be a little more sensible and back off. I can pretend that nothing happened today. That way, not only will you lose your life, but you'll also drag down the 2 great disciples of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. Chapter 43-64. At the end of the day, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao's identities were a threshold that he could not cross. Unless he had no other choice, Wei Xiaodong really did not want to risk his life. Otherwise, if he accidentally injured the 2 of them, he would not be able to endure the wrath of the founding divine nun of the East Sea. Lin Yi ignored Wei Xiaodong and looked at the 2 guest experts. He said indifferently, "You too, other people may not know what's good, but can you not resist my purple gold jade pendant? Even if you haven't seen it with your own eyes, you must have heard of it. Wei Xiaodong is completely heartless and evil. If you continue to help him, you'll be the accomplice of the evildoer. You'll be guilty of the same crime. I advise you not to make a mistake." When he received the purple gold jade pendant from Hong Zhong, Lin Yi had heard Hong Zhong mention that in the Hong Clan Merchant Association, those who were not high enough would not know what the jade pendant represented. However, the guest experts were an exception. They had to go to the headquarters on Middle Island for inspection and training every once in a while. If they were not so inexperienced, they might know the origin of the jade pendant. After all, They were all members of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. If there was no need, he didn't want to kill them all. However, the two guest experts turned a deaf ear to his words. There wasn't even a hint of hesitation on their faces. They just stared coldly at the three of them, as if they would attack without hesitation as long as Wei Xiaodong gave the order. Ha 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 ha, Lingyi, don't waste your effort. You're just an escort from the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Who would believe you if you pretended to be the honorary vice president of the Hong Clan Merchant Association? Or do you always do things without using your brain? Wei Xiaodong laughed mockingly. Of course, he knew that the purple gold jade pendant in Lin Yi's hand was real. Even the two guest experts already understood a little, but he was still fearless. The reason was simple. Although he had not completely controlled the entire branch in the years he had been in the Weyark territorial waters, he had at least bribed the two guest experts to become jackals of the same tribe. The guest experts did not have a subordinate relationship with the branch manager. However, their relationship was often very close. This phenomenon was common in the various branches of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. In the past few years, the two guest experts present had long become a community of interests with Wei Xiaodong. It could be said that they were in the same boat. After all, robbing someone halfway was risky. Those pirates were people who killed without batting an eyelid. Without an expert looking for them, it was very likely that they would be betrayed. Is that so? There was no other way. I originally only wanted to deal with Wei Xiaodong, but since the two of you insist on blocking the way, then don't blame me for being impolite. Lin Yi smiled indifferently. Humph, you still dare to talk big. Facing 3 original infant stage cultivators, do you even have a 5% chance of winning? Don't try to deceive yourselves. Since you came looking for trouble, even if I were to kill you, the Morningstar Academy wouldn't be able to say anything. Wei Xiaodong coldly snorted as he threatened. However, before he could finish his sentence, suddenly, Lin Yi's eyes flashed. He didn't care about anything else and directly attacked. Wei Xiaodong knew that Lin Yi and the other two did not come with good intentions, but from just now until now, he wasn't too worried. After all, no matter how he looked at it, the 3 original infant stage cultivators on his side had the absolute upper hand in terms of strength. In his opinion, as long as Lin Yi was not completely stupid, he should be able to retreat in the face of difficulties and not invite humiliation. But he never expected. Regarding the evaluation of each other's strength, Lin Yi's side did not see it this way. The strength of the 3 original infant stage cultivators was indeed not to be underestimated. However, with Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao, the 2 publicly recognized super geniuses of the Morningstar Academy and the even more powerful Lin Yi, in front of these 3 people, everything else was just fleeting clouds. It could only be said that no matter how cunning Wei Xiaodong was, he was still just a mortal. In front of super geniuses like Lin Yi who were already used to killing those who were a higher level than him, any method of using a mortal's thinking to guess the situation was extremely stupid. From the beginning to the end, they were not on the same level at all. Frenzied 8 trigrams palm strike. Lin Yi and Huang Xiaodao attacked at the same time with great tacit understanding. 2 8 trigrams palms hit the guest expert on the left side at the same time. This person was a dignified original infant stage cultivator, but he made the same mistake as Wei Xiaodong. Not only did he misjudge the situation, but he even somewhat underestimated the enemy. So, at this time, he was so stunned that he did not even have the chance to react. After being hit by the 2 palms, his eyes turned white on the spot. Amidst the screams of the servants, he flew out like a kite with a broken string and directly flew out of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. There was no movement for a long time, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. At the same time, on the other side, Wang Xinyan also attacked. The martial arts she used were neither fist nor palm techniques, nor leg techniques or weapons. The only movement was to put her hands together. The other people did not notice anything strange, but the guest expert on her right suddenly changed in expression. He felt a series of sounds of different heights suddenly ring out from all directions. It was like a series of mountains that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. Not only did it disturb his mind, but even more terrifyingly, it seemed to be able to confuse the soul, causing the true chi in his meridians to stagnate. The guest expert immediately paled in fright. However, his first reaction was not to retreat, but to advance instead, charging straight at Wang Xinyan. Since this person was able to become a guest expert of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, he definitely had some skills. At the very least, his instinctive reaction at this moment was definitely worthy of praise. If he chose to turn around and escape at this moment, he would only expose more openings behind him, and he would only die faster. However, while the choice of advancing instead of retreating was not wrong, it was a pity that he had underestimated the strength of Wang Xinyan, the direct disciple of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. Unlike Lin Yi and Huang Xiaodao, Wang Xinyan was a true early-stage nascent soul expert. With her extraordinary talent and the careful guidance of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea over the past year, it could only be said that the current Wang Xinyan was not an existence that regular nascent soul experts could contend with. The guest expert was already very fast, but before he could reach Wang Xinyan, the sounds coming from all directions became louder and louder, affecting his soul more and more. He suddenly raised his head and immediately gasped. Behind Wang Xinyan, a shadow that looked like black fog had appeared out of nowhere. The shadow pressed down like a mountain, and one could tell with a single glance that it was not an existence of the mortal world. It faintly gave off a transcendent aura, as if it was above everything in the mortal world. Before it, a mighty nascent soul expert felt like a lower creature in front of a higher creature. His body began to tremble instinctively, and he did not dare to take another step forward. Chapter 4365. Wang Xinyan continued to put her palms together like a saintess. She did not move at all, but her lips moved slightly, and she slowly said, "Seal of mountains and seas." Immediately, the mountain-like phantom behind her suddenly rolled over out of thin air. At this moment, the genuine chi in the body of the guest minister was stagnant. Not to mention resisting, he couldn't even dodge. He was directly crushed to the ground by the phantom, leaving a pool of bright red blood and mud, and nothing else. Everyone was dead silent. They looked at Wang Xinyan as if they were looking at a monster. Although Lin Yi and Huang Xiaodao had also instantly killed a guest expert, everyone could at least see how they did it. However, they did not see Wang Xinyan move at all. What kind of move was this? They only saw Wang Xinyan put her palms together, say 4 words softly, and the guest expert was directly turned into a pool of blood. Even a crafty person like Wei Xiaodong was frightened by such a shocking scene. Lin Yi and Huang Xiaodao working together to instantly kill a guest expert was already shocking enough. He did not think that Wang Xinyan would be even more terrifying. From start to end, he could not even see how she did it. Thinking back to how the divine nun of the Eastern Sea had killed Qing Qitian with a single glance at the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, and now that they were in a different place, Wang Xinyan's casual words had directly killed a guest expert. Wei Xiaodong could not help but wonder, were these master and disciple even human? Impressive. Lin Yi and Huang Xiaodao were also shocked by this scene and sighed inwardly. Good. I didn't embarrass Master. Wang Xinyan stuck out her tongue cutely. This seal of mountains and seas was the divine nun of the Eastern Sea's signature martial technique, as well as the main martial technique she had been cultivating for the past year. If she could not even deal with a mere nascent soul guest expert, then even the heavens would not tolerate it. The entire place was dead silent. Everyone looked at each other, and their gazes towards Lin Yi and the others were filled with respect. As for Wei Xiaodong, who had been brimming with confidence this time, his mouth was agape, and he could not say anything for a long time. 3 original infant stage experts? Lin Yi smiled faintly and walked up to Wei Xiaodong as if there was no one else around. He patted Wei Xiaodong's shoulder and said, "Now you're the only one left. Shopkeeper Wei, tell me, how should I deal with you? You guys. Faced with Lin Yi's mocking words, Lin Yi's eyes widened. Wei Xiaodong could only retreat. Even though he knew that the other party was only an expert in the intermediate stage of the Gold Core realm, he did not dare to make a move. After all, the strength that the three of them displayed in an instant was too terrifying. Taking advantage of the fact that the other party had let their guard down, and they were so close to each other, if they could seize the opportunity to capture Ling Yi, that would be the best solution. However, Wei Xiaodong did not lose his cool in the end. After all, he was not a fool. After the scene just now, he had clearly realized that these three people could not be judged by common sense. It seemed like a good opportunity, but if he acted rashly, there was a 99% chance that he would fail. He would die a horrible death. What about us? Things have already come to this. Could it be that Shopkeeper Wei still intends to resist stubbornly to the end? I don't think Shopkeeper Wei is that stupid, right? Lin Yi laughed coldly. In just one move, they had killed 2 foreign experts. Now, the 3 of them had completely shocked everyone in the Celestial Arc branch. At the same time, they had also completely controlled the situation. If he wanted to kill Wei Xiaodong, he could do it now. However, Lin Yi did not intend to do that. What he wanted was to smoothly take over the Celestial Arc branch. If he killed Wei Xiaodong in front of everyone, it would certainly vent his anger, but it would be difficult to deal with the aftermath. Not only would the people in the Celestial Arc branch be anxious, but it would also be difficult to explain to the headquarters of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. No matter what, Wei Xiaodong was a shopkeeper with real power. If they wanted to deal with him, they could only let the Hong Chamber of Commerce handle it themselves. Although Lin Yi was the honorary vice president, he could not just kill him on his own accord. That would turn a good thing into a bad thing. Wei Xiaodong was a shrewd person. He instantly noticed Lin Yi's concerns. He knew that the other party would not dare to kill him just like that. His originally bowed back immediately straightened up.
Wow.
As disciples of the Morningstar Academy, you actually dare to commit crimes with swindlers and swindlers. You dare to come to our Hong Chamber of Commerce to kill people. I will report this to the dean of your academy. Wei Xiaodong instantly jumped up and shouted. He knew that Ling Yi would definitely not be scared away. However, if he could scare Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao away, it would be much easier today. After all, putting aside their strength, the identity of the 2 women was what he was most afraid of. Wei Xiaodong took it for granted that the 2 women were young and impetuous. After hearing Lin Yi's slanderous words, they came to stand up for him. It was just like how students were afraid of being found out by their teachers when they did bad things. As long as he mentioned the dean of the academy, the 2 women might not dare to be so unbridled. Unexpectedly, the 2 women giggled when they heard that. Wang Xinyan raised her eyebrows slightly and smiled. Then go. You. Wei Xiaodong instantly exploded in anger. The other party's fearless attitude clearly showed that they had him under their control. Truly, a tiger that fell to the plains would be bullied by dogs. He was a shopkeeper of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, but he was actually being controlled by a few young juniors. Us? Shopkeeper Wei, you don't have to worry about our matters. You should be more concerned about your own fate. Lin Yi sneered. He then took a specially made black gold chain from the shelf and tied Wei Xiaodong firmly, without saying a word. This was the equipment used by the Law Enforcement Hall of the Sea region to enforce the family rules. Tying it on the body would greatly affect the circulation of qi. Even an original infant stage expert would not be able to break free. It was something that he had obtained from the previous auctions. Its value was not very high, but in a situation like this, it just happened to come in handy. In the process of being tied up, although Wei Xiaodong was flustered and exasperated, he did not dare to resist at all. He was afraid that if he was not careful, he would follow in the footsteps of the 2 foreign experts and be killed by Lin Yi and the other 2 daring fellows. At this time, the other workers and manservants were completely dumbfounded. They were all trembling with fear and did not know what to do. From a psychological point of view, they naturally trusted their immediate superior, Wei Xiaodong, and would not trust an outsider like Lin Yi. However, the problem was that strength determined everything. At this moment, there were only 3 original infant stage experts here. The two foreign experts had already been sent flying, and it was unknown whether they were dead or alive. The remaining Wei Xiaodong was tied up. What could they do? Could it be that they would fight to the death with Lin, Yi, and the other two? Don't look at how many people there were. If they really fought, even if they all attacked together, they would not even be enough to fill the gaps between the opponents' teeth. Chapter 4366. They couldn't beat him, and they couldn't escape either. The only thing they could do was to continue standing there, trembling with fear, and wait for Lin Yi's group to make their next move. Everyone listen up. I am now the honorary vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, temporarily taking over the Wei Arc branch. Lin Yi announced loudly. Lin Yi's gaze slowly swept across everyone's faces, and everyone who was swept by his gaze involuntarily lowered their heads, not daring to meet his gaze. They didn't know if he was really the honorary vice president, but at least they knew that everything was up to him. Where is the vice president? Lin Yi suddenly asked. No one answered, but everyone's gaze had already given the answer, and all of them were looking at a middle-aged man at the side. Lin Yi followed everyone's gaze, and saw that this middle-aged man had a docile expression. Rather than saying that he was honest, it was better to say that he had the temperament of a typical punching bag. With one look, one could tell that this fellow was definitely not a strong person. The middle-aged man originally had his neck shrunk, but seeing everyone looking at him, especially Lin Yi's group, he instantly panicked and hurriedly walked out. I am Honest Chai, the vice president of this branch. I pay my respects to the vice president. The middle-aged man stuttered as he carefully paid his respects. Even though he was the vice president, he relied purely on his experience to climb up and did not have any connections among the higher-ups in the headquarters. Naturally, he didn't know anything about the purple gold jade pendant, and his attitude towards Lin Yi's group was the same as that of the other workers. However, Honest Chai was a cowardly person, and Lin Yi's group was not to be trifled with. Even someone as powerful as Wei Xiaodong was bullied to the point of losing his temper, so he naturally didn't dare to contradict them in public. Since Lin Yi said that he was the honorary vice president, then he would treat it as such. And were you involved in Wei Xiaodong's matters? Lin Yi sized up this person. Many people looked honest at first glance, but in actuality, they were just hiding their strength deeply. Since this person was the vice president under the old fox Wei Xiaodong, it was very possible that he couldn't be underestimated. Perhaps they were jackals of the same tribe. Reporting to vice president. I'm purely idle. I don't know anything. Honest Chai was so scared that he peed his pants and quickly shook his head in denial. Completely unemployed? Lin Yi frowned and couldn't help but ask doubtfully, since you're a dignified vice manager, how could you be unemployed? In any branch of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, the deputy manager was the second most powerful person. Although he did not manage the overall situation like the manager, he still had a lot of power. Wei Xiaodong in the Gaolin Sea. He was a living example. If he didn't have enough power, he wouldn't be able to cooperate with Qin Deli to fill his pockets. How could a person in such an important position be idle? How could he not know anything? It's true. Every word I say is the truth. I won't dare to lie. If I do, may the heavens punish me. Honest Chai hurriedly swore. If he was seen as Wei Xiaodong's accomplice by Lin Yi, he wouldn't even have a place to cry. His death would be even more unjust than Do Yi's. You don't have to be anxious. Whether it's true or not, I'll find someone to ask. Lin Yi said indifferently, then signaled Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaodao to keep a close eye on the tied-up Wei Xiaodong. He then casually called for an assistant. Lin Yi brought the assistant into the guest hall, leaving Honest Chai and the rest to wait anxiously outside. Just now, that deputy manager Chai said he was unemployed. Is that true? Lin Yi turned to look at the assistant and asked without batting an eyelid. It's true. The assistant was just a heaven-rank expert who hadn't even reached foundation establishment. In front of Lin Yi, he was no different from an ordinary person. Just a casual glance from Lin Yi caused his heart to palpitate. Oh, He's a deputy manager with real power. How is he unemployed? Why don't you tell me? Lin Yi asked suspiciously. It's true, it's true. This lowly one doesn't dare to lie. Deputy Manager Chai doesn't really do anything. Everything in our branch is managed by Manager Wei. Deputy Manager Chai rarely shows his face. The assistant was afraid that Lin Yi wouldn't believe him and was about to cry. Rarely shows his face? You're saying that this guy is usually lazy? Lin Yi continued to ask. No, it's not that. Manager Chai has never been lazy in the past. He has always been diligent and diligent. However, a few years ago, after Manager Wei was transferred here, he didn't really manage things, the assistant carefully replied. That means this honest Chai was pushed aside by Wei Xiaodong? Between them, did they have any open conflicts? Lin Yi thoughtfully pinched his chin. The assistant thought carefully and said, if we're talking about open conflicts, it was a few years ago. When Manager Wei was just transferred here, he forcefully took over all the businesses that Deputy Manager Chai was in charge of. At that time, Deputy Manager Chai tried to reason with him. At that time, Manager Wei didn't say anything, nor did he get angry. However, Deputy Manager Chai disappeared for a month. He said that he went to the headquarters in Middle Island. Other than that, there were no other conflicts. Basically, no matter what Manager Wei said, Deputy Manager Chai didn't participate, nor did he express his opinion. Disappeared for a month? Lin Yi couldn't help but feel a little strange. Seeing that the assistant wanted to say something, he said, tell me everything you know. Don't force me to use the soul-searching technique. Yes, yes. The assistant didn't know that Lin Yi didn't know any soul-searching technique and was just trying to scare him. He didn't dare to hide anything and quickly said, I heard that during that month, Deputy Manager Chai didn't actually go to the headquarters in Middle Island. Instead, he was injured by someone and had to rest for a whole month. Rest for a month? That means it was Wei Xiaodong's doing? The corner of Lin Yi's mouth curled up slightly. Deputy Manager Chai never mentioned it to anyone. We don't know either. But that's what everyone guessed. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so afraid of Manager Wei. They didn't dare to do anything and just made him a mere figurehead. The assistant said carefully, Yes, I understand. You can go out and ask Honest Chai to come in. Lin Yi nodded. He had been paying attention to the assistant's expression from beginning to end. He didn't find anything strange. In other words, what this person said should be true. Moreover, the things he revealed matched with Honest Chai's temperament and behavior just now. It was impossible to fabricate anything on the spot, so it had enough credibility. Yes, yes. Only then did the assistant let out a long breath. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.